Chapter 6:14. It was the beginning of summer yet again. Just like in previous years, the heat waves engulfed the entire Principality of Constantine. Even though Su Yi's private territory was located to the north of the Principality of Constantine, it still couldn't escape the heat waves. The entire territory was bathed in the unparalleled power of summer. The natives of the Principality of Constantine were naturally very adapted to this climate. The employees of the new flyer had already been here for several years and had long since adapted to this special climate. However, the people who came from other parts of the continent were extremely uncomfortable with the heat that was already as hot as late summer, even though it was just the beginning of summer. Everyone's body was more or less limp due to the heat wave, to the extent that even their movements that were usually extremely smooth were a little out of shape. Bang! The 30-kilogram round steel pipe fell to the ground with a muffled sound, at the same time kicking up a cloud of dust. Hart shook his head and waved his hand. Next! The person standing at the center of the field suddenly had a dejected expression. His lips moved, and his face was full of unwillingness. In the end, he didn't say anything and walked out of the field dejectedly. Heinz, who was sitting beside Hart, frowned as he watched the other robust man behind him walk into the field. I'm afraid not many people will pass this test, right? Hart lowered his head to look at the form in his hand and grunted in agreement. So far today, only 83 people have passed. That's too little. Heinz couldn't help but say. At this rate, who knows how long it will take to recruit 1,000 people? Hart shrugged. In any case, the chairman said that it would be better to have nothing than to have something substandard. This test must be carried out strictly according to the standards he set. Those who don't meet the standards will be eliminated without exception. Heinz slowly shook his head. He only wants to recruit 1,000 private guards. Although it's not wrong to make the requirements a bit stricter, it's too ridiculous to be this strict. It's fine if he wants these people to have strong enough bodies, but why does he have to require them to have flexible minds? It's not like he's recruiting staff. The chairman only wants his private guards to be able to easily control the military magic machines. This requirement is already common among the guards of our Chamber of Commerce. Hart said. After all, as the guild leader's personal guard, how could I not know how to use military magic machines? Heinz thought about it and was a little puzzled. I don't understand. If he really wanted to make such a request, why didn't he just transfer some of the guards from the Chamber of Commerce to be his personal guards? In any case, the entire new flyer is his. He can do whatever he wants. Who would dare to have any objections? Hart laughed and said, Vice President, aren't you giving your opinion right now? Of course, Sir President said that this is to clearly distinguish the authority between the Chamber of Commerce's guards and his personal guards, so as to avoid future troubles. What trouble could there be? Heinz was even more puzzled. He turned to look at a candidate who had just finished the test and thought that Su Yi was thinking too much. Although the new flyer had already developed to a large scale and could be considered a first-class chamber of commerce in the Lampari Kingdom, if the new flyer was owned by Su Yi alone, no one would oppose it. Since it was like this, why did he have to do something superfluous and recruit other human guards? These newly recruited guards were obviously not as reassuring as the guards who had served the Chamber of Commerce for several years, and their abilities were definitely not as good. If he wanted a personal guard, the guards of the Chamber of Commerce would be more suitable. Moreover, Su Yi didn't only do this in front of the human guards. This time, he spread the news that he wanted to recruit a large number of private guards for his territory. Not only did it include 1,000 human guards, but it also included 1,000 elven guards and 1,000 dwarven guard. Moreover, according to the information he secretly revealed, he might even recruit 1,000 beastman guards from the Black Rice Wasteland. If this kind of private guard was formed, it would become a multi-race alliance. These other races didn't have a good relationship with humans, they didn't like each other. If they were put together, this private guard wouldn't be peaceful. Heinz continued to watch Sue-Yi recruit private guards for a while before he finally couldn't sit still. He came to find Sue-Yi with a worried look. Sue-Yi was currently in the New Flyers Magic Machine Development Center, discussing a strange device with Camby and the other engineers. Only when Heinz forcefully patted his shoulder did he notice Heinz's arrival. When Heinz asked him about the recruitment of private guards, he was stunned for a moment before he reacted. Based on his expression, it seemed like he didn't care about this matter at all. Heinz, I feel that you don't need to worry about this. The treatment of becoming my private guards is good, so even if they don't like each other, it's impossible for anything to happen. But, Heinz still wanted to say something, but Sue-Yi grabbed his shoulder and enthusiastically pointed at the strange device everyone was talking about. Alright, don't worry about these small things. Look at this is what I really care about and what you as the vice chairman should pay attention to. Heinz couldn't help rolling his eyes. He knew that with Sue-Yi's attitude, no matter how he asked, Sue-Yi wouldn't reply. But he had known Sue-Yi for all these years, so he knew that Sue-Yi wouldn't do anything meaningless. He suddenly wanted to recruit all these private guards. He definitely had his long-term plans. Heinz was already in a half-retired state, but he suddenly came all the way from Banta City to the Principality of Constantine because he suddenly heard that Sue-Yi wanted to recruit private guards. He couldn't hold back the concern he had for Sue-Yi and the new flyer, so he wanted to ask Sue-Yi about this. Although he hadn't asked Sue-Yi about his actual plans, based on Sue-Yi's expression, he definitely already had his plans, so naturally he didn't need to worry. Thinking of this, Heinz shook his head and put down the worry in his heart. He focused on the strange device in front of him. After looking at it for a while, Heinz seemed to have understood something. This is very similar to the wind magic engine. Sue-Yi laughed and patted Heinz's shoulder as he loudly said, "You really are my old friend," recognizing it with a single glance. "That's right, this is the newly developed fire magic engine." Heinz's eyes opened wide. "It's actually the fire magic engine? It's finally been developed?" "That's right," Sue-Yi said with a laugh. "How about it? Aren't you very excited?" Heinz kept nodding. This fire magic engine had been developed 3 years ago, and New Flyer had invested a large amount of manpower, but there hadn't been much progress. As Sue-Yi's oldest partner, Heinz knew how important this fire magic engine was to Sue-Yi. He also knew how much effort Sue-Yi had invested in this. This was something that had troubled Sue-Yi for a long time. It could be considered the most difficult research project since the Frestek Chamber of Commerce was founded. Now that it had finally been developed, even if Heinz didn't understand what this fire magic engine meant, he was still very excited. "Great. It's finally a success," Heinz said with a nod with a smile. "This is good. Sue-Yi, what did you say would happen with this fire magic engine?" Sue-Yi couldn't help shaking his head with a smile. Heinz clearly didn't understand this thing at all, but he was still this excited. It was clear that it was because of him. Sue-Yi's heart was moved. He took Heinz's shoulder and pointed at the fire magic engine as he explained, "Heinz, you should know that our company's magic car hasn't been able to break through 60 kilometers an hour. You said that this is because the wind magic engine has a natural limit. Without a major breakthrough in mechanical performance, it's very hard to break through this limit with just the wind magic engine alone," Heinz said. "According to what you said, with this fire magic engine, the magic car can break through 60 kilometers an hour?" Sue-Yi laughed. "It's not just 60 kilometers an hour. Let me tell you, with this fire magic engine, the magic car can even break through 200 kilometers an hour." Heinz was stunned. 200 kilometers? Isn't this too exaggerated? No, this isn't exaggerated at all. 200 kilometers is already very slow. The goal in my heart is to break through 400 kilometers at the very least. Moreover, as long as we keep developing the fire magic engine and use it on the magic airship, it isn't impossible for the magic airship to break through 1,000 kilometers an hour. Heinz shook his head. You're speaking nonsense. 1,000 kilometers in an hour, it's impossible just thinking about it. Sue-Yi revealed a smile and looked at Canby. Canby gave a soft cough before saying with a serious look, Vice Chairman Heinz, Sir Chairman is speaking the truth. According to our current calculations of the fire magic engine, in theory, it is possible for a magic machine equipped with the fire magic engine to break 1,000 kilometers per hour. Of course, this is only in theory right now. To achieve this goal, we need large amounts of research and practice. The dwarves didn't like to lie. If Heinz still doubted Sue-Yi's words, now that Canby said this, he had no choice but to believe it. 1,000 kilometers an hour? Just thinking about it, Heinz felt dizzy. Even if it was only in theory, this was too unbelievable. After thinking for a bit, Heinz couldn't help saying to Sue-Yi, not to mention 1,000 kilometers an hour, even if it's only 400 kilometers an hour, isn't that too fast? Running from one end of the Lampari kingdom to the other is only 1,000 kilometers. According to what you said, wouldn't it only take 2 hours to run from one end to the other? Is there a need to be this fast? Sue-Yi revealed a faint smile. I say, Heinz, isn't your heart too small? The Lampari kingdom is only 1,000 kilometers from one end to the other, but the Kanla Empire and the Mala Empire are far more than that. Heinz rolled his eyes at Sue-Yi. He thought that it wasn't that his heart was too small, it was that his heart was too big. The Lampari kingdom was only a small country in the signs. How could it be compared to the Kanla Empire and the Mala Empire? The scene of him recruiting Sue-Yi's personal guards flashed in his mind. Heinz suddenly had a terrifying thought and he couldn't help taking a cold breath. If Sue-Yi really thought this, his heart wasn't just too big. It was simply a fantasy. Chapter 6:15. Even if the Principality of Constantine had a hot climate for most of the year because of geography, once summer came, it wasn't hotter than the other countries on the signs. Moreover, if they really compared it, they had a bigger advantage. It was that they were close to the sea, so they could enjoy the coolness of the sea at any time. Under Sue-Yi's instructions, the new flyer had developed a large section of the beach. It was for the new flyer's employees to relax, but because this section of the beach was very beautiful and had enough facilities, it attracted countless people who treated this place as a good tourist spot. Every summer, this place would be filled with people and it would be very lively. It actually brought quite a bit of tourism income to Sue-Yi's territory. Sue-Yi, you're opening your territory to all these normal people, is it really good? Seveni looked at the lively scene on the beach through her binoculars before turning to Sue-Yi to ask this. Sue-Yi gave a shrug. What's wrong with this? My territory is currently worrying about population, so if more people come here and increase the popularity of this place, it is something to be happy about. Seveni looked at Sue-Yi with a coquettish look in her eyes. So you didn't hesitate to use large amounts of money to steal people from Banta City? Sue-Yi gave a laugh and avoided this question. He asked Seveni back, Don't talk about me, Your Majesty. You abandoned the millions of citizens of the Lampari kingdom and secretly came to my place for a vacation. Is this really good? Seveni spread her arms and stretched out. She let out a long sigh and said with a faint smile, No matter how responsible Your Majesty is, you still need to have your own time, right? Then again, I didn't come for a vacation this time, rather I came to discuss business with you. Speaking of this, it is also considered business. Sue-Yi laughed. Then Honorable Queen, since we're discussing business, why are you wearing such a cool bikini? Don't tell me you intend to rely on your charming figure to make me lose my judgment and thus increase your bargaining chip? Seveni pursed her lips into a smile. She looked down at her new light pink bikini and her face was a bit red, looking a bit shy. Is my figure qualified to affect your judgment? Of course. Sue-Yi nodded seriously. 70. Even if you throw away the excitement of your identity as the queen, just you alone is attractive enough. Really? 70 had a pleasantly surprised look in her eyes. How does he compare to Steel? This. Sui revealed a smile. Still is my wife, there is no one who can compare to her in my heart. This kind of comparison isn't fair to you. 70 gave a sigh before revealing a normal smile. She looked over Sui. Alright, I've already changed my clothes, what about you? Sui looked down at the shirt he was wearing and shook his head. Liz and the others should have already prepared it for me, I'll change at the beach. The two left Sui's private manor and came to the cliff behind the manor. Under the cliff was Sui's private beach. When Sui, Steel, Liz, and Linda went down to play, it was Sui and Steel who flew down with one person each. Then there were more visitors, and adding in the fact that Evita, Akali, and the others often came to play, they all liked to swim in the sea. Sui installed a wind-powered elevator not far from the platform to make it easier to go up and down. Sui came to the elevator, and when he was about to open it, 70 called out to him. Turning back, 70 reached out her hands to Sui and said with a smile, Sui, carry me down. Sui was surprised and slightly knit his brows. This isn't good, Your Majesty. If others see this, I don't care, but it will affect your reputation. It won't. 70 shook her head and gave a chuckle. Today is a rare chance for me to relax, let me be willful for once, alright? Sui and 70 had known each other for a long time, but he had never seen 70 act like this before. Although 70's appearance wasn't as beautiful as Steel and Princess Caroline, she was still very good-looking. Moreover, she had always been very strong and calm, rarely acting like a girl. Now that she suddenly acted like this, Sui's heart couldn't help skipping a beat. After thinking about it, Sui shook his head with a smile. He walked over and reached out to grab 70's waist. Using his magic, he flew down from the high cliff. When they were in the air, 70 couldn't help calling out in surprise. When Sui quickly fell down with her in his arms, 70 kept calling out in surprise, as her voice was filled with excitement and joy. Sui couldn't help shaking his head. Although 70 was the queen of the Lampari kingdom, she was still a little girl in her 20s. In the end, she still had the appearance of a girl. After a while, the two landed on the soft beach at the bottom of the cliff. 70 let out a soft breath and patted her chest, like she was still a bit shocked. Sui, actually I've always wanted to experience the feeling of flying in the sky. It really is as I imagined, it really is. Too exciting. Sui couldn't help laughing. I say, Your Majesty, if you want to fly in the sky, any magician can carry you like this, how hard is it? 70 shook her head. It's easy to find a magician, but it's impossible to find a magician who can carry me into the sky. Why? Sui was surprised. 70 looked at Sui and it was hard to tell if her eyes were filled with pleasant surprise or rebuke. Because other than you, there isn't a magician who would dare to carry me into the sky like this. Sui rolled his eyes. You asked for this yourself, you can't blame me. Of course I don't blame you, 70 said with a faint smile. Being able to fly in the sky has been my dream since I was young, but it's a pity that I don't have talent for magic, otherwise I would have been addicted to studying magic. I wouldn't be like this, sitting on this throne that I don't like, racking my brains for the complicated matters of the kingdom. Sui shook his head with a bitter smile. For the citizens of the Lampari kingdom, this is a loss you have to bear. I can't help you with this, but I can help you with other things. For example, if you want to fly in the sky, you don't need to find a magician to carry you. You just need to buy our company's new product, the magic airship. You can fly freely in the sky and you can fly for as long as you want. 70 looked at Sui with a bit of a smile. Sui, I've found that you're becoming more and more of a profiteer. At this time, you actually didn't forget to promote your company's new product to me. Sui immediately complained. I'm recommending you with a conscience, alright? The magic airship is our company's new product, The technology far surpasses all the magic machines our company has before. It represents the highest level of technology in the world. With this magic airship, you can be like a magician with wind magic, freely flying in the sky. Think about it, isn't this attractive enough? I admit that it is very attractive. Seveni nodded. When Sue-E was prepared, waiting for her to say, but, Seveni revealed a sly smile as she continued, So Sue-E, I'm planning to order 100 magic airships from your company, what do you think? Huh? Sue-E was stunned. Seeing the smile on Seveni's face, Sue-E instantly understood. In the end, Seveni had come prepared this time. It was clear that she already knew about the magic airships that New Flyer had developed and wanted to order them. Now she had followed Sue-E's words to make this request. Thinking of this, Sue-E felt a bit angry and a bit funny. He shook his head at Seveni. I say, Your Majesty, it isn't a bad thing that you want to buy magic airships. Why are you beating around the bush? It's very simple, it's because I don't have money. Sue-E snappily said. You want to buy magic airships if you don't have money? And you want to buy 100 at once? Let me tell you, our company's price for each magic airship is 300,000 gold coins, so 100 of them is 30 million gold coins. Alright, calculating it like this, your Lampari kingdom really doesn't have money. Then how do you want to solve this problem? Seveni revealed a faint smile. Sue-E, our Lampari kingdom indeed can't pay a large sum of 30 million gold coins at once, but your New Flyer also can't give us 100 magic airships at once, right? Yes. Sue-E helplessly nodded. The production capacity problem had always been an old problem for New Flyer. Although because of the increase in staff and the automatic production magic machines developed by Sanchali, their production capacity had increased. As the New Flyer continued to develop and the magic machines became more popular, New Flyer received more and more orders and their production capacity couldn't meet the demand. Especially after Seveni was crowned the Queen of the Lampari Kingdom and the New Flyer returned to the Lampari Kingdom, with the addition of the Lampari Kingdom's large and mature market, there was an explosive increase in orders. During this time, everyone in New Flyer had been very busy, even their vacation time had decreased by quite a bit. Since we can't satisfy each other's demands at once, why don't we make this transaction as long as possible? Seveni continued, Sue-E, I've heard that when the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce sells their new villas, they allow customers to use a more flexible transaction method. Sue-E was surprised. You're talking about installment payments. Chapter 6:16. Installment payment was a suggestion that Sue-E had given Chairman Cruz before. Because this method of payment was more flexible, it could allow people who couldn't afford it all at once to have a new type of villa that they dreamed of, so it was very well received once it was introduced. The Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce's new villa district was meant for the rich of Banta City, but because of this installment payment method, many normal families in Banta City could afford a villa that they wanted, which greatly increased the sales volume of the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce. Just with this suggestion, the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce's annual income from housing sales had increased by 3 times. Chairman Cruz was naturally very grateful to Sue-E. But because the transportation and information flow on the signs wasn't as smooth as on Earth and this world didn't have a complete trust system, this method could only be implemented on a small scale and was very limited. Other than suggesting this to Chairman Cruz, Sue-E didn't recommend this to the other companies. As for the New Flyer, because the New Flyer's production capacity wasn't enough and the New Flyer had never taken the initiative to promote themselves, naturally they didn't use this method. Now that Seveni suddenly mentioned that she wanted to pay in installments, Sue-E couldn't help being surprised. But thinking about it, this suggestion was very feasible. Although the Lampari Kingdom's financial situation wasn't good, it was still a country. Even if they didn't have gold coins, they still had a large amount of resources. Although there were many uncontrollable risks when making deals with a country, the Lampari Kingdom was currently controlled by Seveni. Towards this queen, Su-yi had a good understanding of her and had enough trust in her. As long as Seveni's control over the Lampari kingdom didn't weaken, he could be assured when making deals with the Lampari kingdom. Not to mention that the new flyer was currently cooperating with the Lampari kingdom, so they had a high dependence on the new flyer, so naturally they were willing to strengthen their relationship with the new flyer. Installment payment was a long-term deal, so it was a way to strengthen their relationship. As for the Lampari kingdom's ability to pay, Su-yi wasn't too worried. Now New Flyer and the Lampari Kingdom's joint venture magic machine factories were all over the Lampari Kingdom. So far, there were a total of 76 factories that could produce all kinds of household magic machines, including some production magic machines. Just last month, the household magic machines produced by the 76 joint venture factories had already surpassed the output of New Flyer. Even if there was a difference in quality and they couldn't compete with Shinfei brand household magic machines in the high-end market, in terms of low and medium-end household magic machines, they could compete with the household magic machines of the magic machine companies from before. In the Lampari Kingdom, because these factories were joint ventures with the New Flyer, they could be branded as New Flyer. Adding in the fact that they were local factories of the Lampari Kingdom, naturally they received the support of most of the citizens of the Lampari Kingdom. Other than this, the Lampari Kingdom also sold these products to the surrounding 6 countries, earning large amounts of gold coins from this. Even with Su-yi's suggestion, the Lampari Kingdom even used special channels to smuggle large amounts of household magic machines to the Sac Kingdom, receiving many benefits from the Sac Kingdom. According to the data that the Lampari Kingdom had provided to the New Flyer, in just 3 months of last year, the Lampari Kingdom had earned a large profit of over 2 million gold coins from the joint venture factories. Through this income, the Lampari Kingdom's finances had earned close to 500,000 gold coins. It made the Lampari Kingdom's yearly income break 3 million gold coins. Now that half of the year had passed, the Lampari Kingdom's treasury had already collected over 2 million gold coins in taxes from the magic machine industry. Adding in the taxes from the magic machine industry and the other industries, the kingdom's treasury had earned a high income of over 3,400,000 gold coins just from this. According to this trend, by the end of this year, the Lampari Kingdom's yearly income would break an unprecedented 5 million gold coins. Since the Lampari Kingdom was founded, in the 600 years of history of the Lampari Kingdom, there had never been a year where their finances were as good as this year's. With a good financial situation, Seveni had enough confidence to reform the Lampari Kingdom. It had only been half a year since Seveni's coronation, and the people of the Lampari Kingdom had greatly changed. This had increased Seveni's prestige in the Lampari Kingdom and increased her control over the kingdom. If it wasn't for the situation in the Lampari Kingdom becoming more stable, how could Seveni as the queen have the time to come to the Principality of Constantine? There's no problem with installment payments, but Seveni, the total price of 100 magic airships is 30 million gold coins. Even if it's 100 years in installments, you have to pay back 300,000 gold coins each year. Moreover, this is on the basis that I don't ask for any interest. Not to mention that I clearly won't accept a term as long as 100 years. Su-yi thought about it before speaking with a serious look. It's very clear that I also won't accept a term as long as 100 years. How about this? I suggest that the installments be 20 years. What do you think? Seveni asked. 20 years. Su-yi knit his brows. Even if you don't calculate the interest, you still have to pay 1,500,000 gold coins each year. Although your Lampari Kingdom's finances aren't bad right now, this will create quite a bit of pressure. If it's just for 100 magic airships, I don't recommend you make this choice. Seveni revealed a faint smile. Who said that we have to pay the same amount each year? Our kingdom's finances aren't enough right now, so in the beginning, we'll only pay a small amount. When the kingdom's finances become better, we'll pay a higher amount. It's fine as long as it's 20 years. As for the specific amount, we can discuss it in detail. This is a method. But 70, why do you think that I'll agree to this? This proposal has no benefits for our new flyer. Although we are friends, as the chairman of the new flyer, I can't agree to this. Sui said. I understand. 70 said with a smile. 70 said with a smile. So other than this proposal, I have another cooperation plan. I wonder if you're interested? What is it? Sui was a bit curious. What benefits does it have for our new flyer? Of course it's good for you. 70 nodded. Sui, didn't you go to see Commander Lantis before? Moreover, you suggested to him that the Western Army should strengthen their defenses on the Black Rice Wasteland to prevent the Sac Kingdom from invading, right? Sui wasn't surprised that 70 knew about this, but he was surprised that she would suddenly mention this matter and what she had just said. We don't have the ability to control the Black Rice Wasteland right now because the investment is too big and the kingdom's finances can't support this kind of consumption. But our Lampari kingdom doesn't have money. Sui, your new flyer is very rich. Seeing 70's smile, Sui's expression became strange. Could it be this cooperation proposal is very simple? Your new flyer will pay and our Lampari kingdom will pay. I can mobilize some of the Western Army to take orders from your new flyer. As long as it's related to the Black Rice Wasteland, you will have full command of the Western Army. Although he had guessed a bit, Sui was still very shocked. If 70 said this, wasn't it equal to handing the Western Army to him? As the Queen of the Lampari Kingdom, giving the army of the kingdom to a company, and it was the chairman of a company that wasn't in the Lampari Kingdom, this was simply shocking. 70, aren't you afraid of being scolded to death by the people of the Lampari Kingdom if they knew about this? 70 gave a soft snort. If anyone dares to oppose, I'll have them think of a way to earn the 30 million gold coins. If they don't have the skills, then obediently shut up. Seeing the dignity in 70's eyes, Sui couldn't help smiling. 70 rarely said this before, but after being the queen for half a year, she naturally had this dignity. All right, I have to admit that this proposal is very tempting to me. But 70, I still don't feel that this is enough for me to agree to your proposal of paying in installments. Because from your words, I heard another layer of meaning. 70, you're planning on having me take care of all the expenses of the Western Army? Of course. 70 gave a shrug. 70 gave a shrug. If I had enough money, why would I take the risk of having many people oppose me? All right, I can only refuse. Sui shook his head. Unless you can really give the Western Army to me, I don't feel that doing this will benefit me and the new flyer at all. If this isn't enough, I'll add another condition. 70 said with a smile. 70 said with a smile. Not only on the Black Rice Wasteland, even on anything related to the Principality of Constantine, the Western Army will still be under your command. What do you think? Seeing 70's smile, Sui's heart was shocked, but his expression didn't change. All right, we have a deal. Chapter 6:17. 70's trip to the Principality of Constantine this time was to meet with Sui to discuss the cooperation between the new flyer and the Lampari Kingdom, but according to her own words, she was using this as an excuse to relax for 2 days. She had indeed achieved this goal. Other than the matter of renting the Western Army to the new flyer that she had personally discussed with Sui, the rest of the matters related to the factories between the new flyer and the Lampari Kingdom were all discussed by her subordinates with the new flyer. Correspondingly, Sui didn't care about these matters. As for the specifics of the negotiations, he left them to Kennard and the other managers of the company while he played with 70 for 2 days. According to 70, other than Sui, there was no one else in the Lampari Kingdom who was like Sui, not having any scruples in front of her. He treated her as a normal friend and let her enjoy herself. During these 2 days, other than taking 70 to swim in the sea and enjoy the sun on the beach, Sui also enjoyed the thrill of car racing in the territory with 70. They even boarded the small magic speedboat and charged through the waves on the sea. On the final day, Sui rode the magic airship with 70, letting her experience the feeling of freely flying through the air. After riding it, the excited 70 directly asked Sui to give her a magic airship as soon as possible for her to use. This magic airship couldn't be placed in the Lampari Kingdom's budget, it was completely paid for by 70's personal finances. It had to be known, although 70 was the queen of the Lampari Kingdom, her personal finances weren't rich. Now that she was willing to take out 300,000 gold coins to buy a magic airship, it could be seen how much she liked the magic airship. 2 days later, 70, who had finished her short trip to the Principality of Constantine, returned to the Lampari Kingdom. Because of her arrival, New Flyer, who had been on high alert, could finally let out a sigh of relief and return to their daily lives. When summer came, it was the peak sales period for New Flyer's household magic machines. In just June, according to the final statistics, the Frestec Chamber of Commerce had sold 360,000 magic fans, over 80,000 magic air conditioners, and over 30,000 magic refrigerators. Just through these 3 household magic machines that were the most needed in summer, New Flyer had earned a shocking 1,570,000 gold coins in June. In the magic machine department, New Flyer's magic cars were very popular in the Kingdom of Ruhr. First was the 4,000 small and medium transport magic cars and 700 large transport magic cars. Just with the transport magic cars, New Flyer had earned a profit of 600,000 gold coins. Next was the magic sedans. Because all the nobles and merchants in the Kingdom of Ruhr wanted them, once they were introduced, the magic sedans sold in large amounts in the Kingdom of Ruhr. In just June, the magic sedans had sold over 300 units in the Kingdom of Ruhr, giving New Flyer a profit of 50,000 gold coins. Although this number was much lower than the profits of the other departments, Sui believed that the market for the magic sedans was very wide. When the living conditions of the citizens of the Kingdom of Ruhr gradually improved, the sales of the magic sedans would explode like the sedans on Earth. Even in the Lampari Kingdom, there were already signs of this. New Flyer's cooperation with the Lampari Kingdom didn't include magic cars, so when the magic sedans were sold in the Lampari Kingdom, they were considered imported goods. They had to pay a certain tariff, so they were forced to sell at a higher price. But even like this, the magic sedans were still very popular in the Lampari Kingdom. As the origin of the magic sedans, almost all the nobles and merchants in the Lampari Kingdom had to have a magic sedan. If you still rode in a horse carriage, it was simply a shame and you didn't have the face to go out. What Sui really cared about was that there were some citizens in the Lampari Kingdom that had a demand for magic sedans. These commoners weren't nobles or large merchants, but they were also very interested in magic sedans. But these citizens didn't have the financial power to take out close to 1,000 gold coins to buy a magic sedan. So Sui considered doing the same thing as on Earth and selling magic sedans in installment. Although there was a bit of risk in doing this in the signs, considering the market, Sui felt that this method was worth it. However, even if these citizens were ignored, the magic sedans had sold over 600 units in the Lampari Kingdom last month, bringing a profit of over 100,000 gold coins to New Flyer. As for the transport magic cars and the large and medium-sized passenger magic cars, there was an explosive increase in sales. In June, these 2 magic cars had sold a shocking 13,000 units in the Lampari Kingdom. Just based on this, New Flyer had earned a terrifying profit of close to 2 million gold coins. Adding in the profits from the bicycles, tires, and production magic machines, New Flyer had earned a total profit of over 5 million gold coins in June. Even if all the expenses were thrown out, New Flyer had earned a net profit of over 3 million gold coins in this month. And this wasn't counting the profits from the military magic machines at all. Of course, in terms of military magic machines, New Flyer didn't earn that much money. The ceasefire agreement with Count Wine allowed Sui to obtain large amounts of territory, but he also needed to provide large amounts of military magic machines to Count Wine. Now that Sui had reached an agreement with Seveni, Sui was basically renting the Western Army from Seveni. In order to increase the battle strength of the Western Army, Sui naturally had to equip them with military magic machines. Even if Sui knew that it was impossible for him to take back the military magic machines from the Western Army, which was equivalent to giving them away for free, he was lacking in manpower right now. If he could obtain the support of the Western Army, many things could be easily solved. With New Flyer's current financial resources, it was enough to support this consumption. After July, even if the weather was hot, the Lampari Kingdom's Western Army equipped with large amounts of military magic machines provided by New Flyer set out and headed into the Black Rice Wasteland. If the Western Army dared to do this before, it would cause the beastmen of the Black Rice Wasteland to resist. They would think that this was a human kingdom invading the Black Rice Wasteland to steal the beastmen's land. But this time, the beastmen of the Black Rice Wasteland didn't react at all. When the Western Army passed by the beastmen tribes, they were warmly welcomed by the beastmen and received large amounts of supplies. It was clear that this was the effect of New Flyer. When the Frestek Chamber of Commerce came to the Black Rice Wasteland to invest in factories, they were viewed as enemies by all the beastmen. But after several years of development, the Frestek Chamber of Commerce and the other human companies had received the full recognition of the beastmen. The reason was very simple: New Flyer and the other human companies had given them a better life. After entering the Black Rice Wasteland without any obstructions, the Western Army didn't immediately approach the border between the Black Rice Wasteland and the Sac Kingdom. Rather, they cooperated with New Flyer and the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce to begin building fortifications at the border. These fortifications were different from the brick walls they used to build on the border. Rather, they used the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce's most mature reinforced concrete structure. When they helped build the dam upstream of the Sandy River, the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce had used this structure to build the dam with the support of Sui. Now that they had several years of experience, the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce was very proficient with this structure. Adding in the endless funds and resources from New Flyer, this fortification was built very quickly. In just a month's time, more than 30 kilometers of fortifications had been built. If one looked at it from the outside, this fortification was a bit like the Great Wall, but it was a bit smaller. It was over 5 meters tall and around 3 meters wide. But compared to the Great Wall, this fortification was without a doubt much stronger. Using reinforced concrete as a fortification, not to mention blocking the attacks of the normal armies of this world, even if Sui used a powerful 9th grade spell, he would only be able to create a hole in it. When this fortification to the north of the Black Rice Wasteland was finished, it could be said that the Sac Kingdom would be able to go south through the Black Rice Wasteland. The Black Rice Wasteland wouldn't be disturbed at all and could develop in peace. For the Lampari Kingdom, this was also very beneficial. If there was no worry about the Black Rice Wasteland, the Lampari Kingdom could focus more on the north of the kingdom. So although Seveni rented the Western Army to Sui had received a lot of criticism and opposition in the Lampari Kingdom, when Sui proposed this method of cooperation, it was completely approved. Of course, Sui wasn't willing to do this in his heart. This fortification to the people of the Signs could be considered unbreakable, but to Sui, this so-called fortification didn't have much meaning, and it would be hard for it to block a truly powerful attack. New Flyer had invested a total of 3 million gold coins to build this fortification. If this money was used for other things, the returns would be much higher. But in order to obtain the approval of the Lampari Kingdom's army and create a stable environment for the Black Rice Wasteland, this 3 million gold coins had to be spent. However, for Sui and New Flyer, The Black Rice Wasteland was only one of the places that needed a stable environment. The stability of another place was even more important. But this place wasn't stable. Chapter 6:18. With the support of New Flyer, Count Wine continued his fierce offensive against the lords of the southern principality of Constantine. In a few months, Count Wine not only completely defeated the alliance of the 4 lords who joined forces to resist him, but he also defeated 3 lords and took over a large territory of more than 10,000 square kilometers. The current Count Wine was already the strongest lord in the Stantine Duchy. There wasn't one of them. The Principality of Constantine in the north was in a state of war, and the south was not peaceful either. In the first few years, Anclo had been accumulating strength. Although he had been constantly expanding his territory and increasing his strength, attracting a lot of attention in the south of the Principality of Constantine, compared to Lord Wine, he had been keeping a low profile. However, since entering the year 3785 of the continental calendar, Anclo had begun to develop in the south of the Principality of Constantine. In just the first half of the year, Anclo had more than doubled the area of his territory. Now, the total area of his territory was more than 10,000 square kilometers. Although he was not the lord with the largest territory in the south of the Principality of Constantine, in terms of strength, especially on the battlefield, no one dared to doubt that he was the most powerful one. The reason was simple. Because he had the full support of New Flyer. After signing the agreement with Lord Wine, New Flyer cut off the supply of military magic machines to all the lords in the Principality of Constantine, except for Lord Wine and Anclo. Without the supply of ammunition and maintenance, the military magic machines naturally could not be used for long. In the beginning, the other lords could still compete with Lord Wine and Anclo with their inventory. However, after a while, the military magic machines in their hands could not be used. The other lords were defeated under the attack of Lord Wine and Anclo. They had no ability to resist at all. Everyone knew very well that the key to the victory of the war between the lords in the Principality of Constantine was the New Flyer. To put it bluntly, New Flyer could even completely control the development of the situation in the Principality of Constantine. After realizing this, many people naturally couldn't sit still no matter what. ###Zilzilo. There were many differences between Signs and Earth, but there were also some similarities. Summer-autumn cicada was one of them. Every summer, Su-Yi would always feel a sense of intimacy when he heard the familiar chirping of cicadas. It had been 8 years since Su-Yi came to this world. Although he had already adapted to life in this world, got married, had children, and started a family, Su-Yi still often missed everything on Earth. Listening to the chirping of the cicadas, he seemed to have returned to his childhood on Earth. Every summer, he and his friends would hold a self-made net and chase butterflies and cicadas all over the mountains. This year's summer was still hot. Su-Yi took a break from his busy schedule and sat under the shade of a tree in the backyard of the manor. Listening to the chirping of the cicadas above his head, he thought of his time on Earth. Suddenly, his childishness was aroused. He asked Linda to find a fine net and a piece of iron wire. Then, he broke off a branch of the right thickness from the tree and skillfully made a net. "Hey, Freya, Daddy will take you to catch butterflies and cicadas, okay?" Su-Yi asked Freya, who had been watching him make the net, with a smile. Freya was already over 2 years old. Although she was still at an age where she could not understand anything, she could already run, jump, and speak very fluently. When she heard Su-Yi's question, she looked up at the net in Su-Yi's hand and asked in a childish voice, "Daddy, why do we have to catch butterflies and cicadas?" Su-Yi smiled and squatted down. He pinched Freya's chubby little face and asked, "Freya, do you think butterflies are beautiful?" "Well, butterflies are the most beautiful." "Well, do you want to get closer and see why butterflies are so beautiful?" Su-Yi asked again. Yes, Daddy, can you call the butterflies over and let me take a good look at them? Of course I can. Come, follow Daddy, I will take you to chat with the butterflies. If it was in a normal climate, now that it was mid-August, there would be no trace of butterflies. However, because the Principality of Constantine was located in the southern part of the continent, the climate was always hot. In addition, Su Yi's private territory was close to the sea and the air was humid. At this time, there were still countless butterflies fluttering in the air. Su Yi led the excited Freya into the woods next to the manor. At a glance, they could see several kinds of colorful butterflies shuttling back and forth in the wood. Freya cheered and rushed over, but the butterflies were so frightened that they flew everywhere in the air. Su Yi stretched the net into the air and easily caught several butterflies. Su Yi carefully picked a butterfly and put it in Freya's palm. The magic in his body flowed and formed a small cyclone near Freya's palm, just enough to press the butterfly in Freya's palm, so that it could not fly away. Freya was pleasantly surprised. She carefully held the butterfly with both hands and looked around for a while. Suddenly, she looked up at Su Yi and asked, "Daddy, why doesn't it fly?" Su Yi was a little confused. "Don't you want to chat with the butterfly? It's in your hand now. Wouldn't it be good if you played with it for a while?" Freya shook her head. "But I just liked the way it flew. It wouldn't look good if it stopped like this." Then she looked at the net in Su Yi's hand and pointed at the butterflies stuck on it. "Daddy, put them down too. They are so pitiful." Su Yi looked at Freya in surprise and couldn't help but laugh. Although Freya was only 2 years old, she was a kind-hearted little girl, and this was exactly what he valued most. Su Yi picked the butterflies one by one according to Freya's instructions and let them all fly again. Looking at the groups of butterflies fluttering in the woods, Freya laughed happily again. She ran back and forth in the woods with small steps, as if she was full of vitality. Seeing Freya's happy appearance, Su Yi also felt his entire body become happy. Because of the various problems in the Black Rice Wasteland and the Principality of Constantine, he had been extremely busy. Now that he could play with Freya for a while, it was simply the best way to relax. When he was about to bring Freya deeper into the forest, Liz, who had been guarding the forest and giving Su Yi and Freya some space, suddenly rushed over. "Master, there is a guest." Seeing the nervous expression on Liz's face, Su Yi felt a bit strange. "What guest?" "It was brought over by Sir CEO. He said that Duke Stantine sent an envoy." "Duke Stantine sent it?" Su Yi was stunned, but then he smiled. "That's right, this Duke can't hold it in anymore." After handing Freya over to Liz, Su Yi went to the front yard and saw Kennard and the envoy sent by Duke Stantine in the living room. The 3 envoys were all acquaintances of Su Yi. They were the 3 ministers under Duke Stantine that Su Yi had come into contact with after coming to the Principality of Constantine for the first time. The Frestec Chamber of Commerce had invested at least 2 million gold coins in them over the years, feeding them until their stomachs were filled with fat. When they saw Su Yi, naturally they were very polite. After both sides greeted each other with smiles, Su Yi asked them about their purpose for coming here. The 3 of them looked at each other and a fat minister replied with a smile, "Chairman Su, no, Viscount Su, we came this time to report some good news to you." "Good news?" Su Yi nodded. "What's the good news?" The fat minister laughed and said, "Viscount Su, in view of you and the new flyer's contributions to the Principality of Constantine that can't be ignored, the Duke has decided to raise your title from Viscount to Count. That is to say, from today onwards we will be calling you Count Su." On the side, Kennard had a look of pleasant surprise. He came from a noble family and placed great importance on his status as a noble. He had always been vexed that Su Yi's title wasn't high because he also had the status of a baron in the Lampari kingdom. If Su Yi didn't have a title, it would be equivalent to him being a baron of the Lampari kingdom under a commoner. Even if no one treated Su Yi as a normal citizen, with the difference in status, there would be a bit of a grudge in his heart. Now that Sue had been promoted to a count, even if the status of a count was given to him by Duke Stantine, compared to a count of the Lampari kingdom, Sue only needed a suitable status as a noble, and that was enough. Sue had a calm expression as he smiled and nodded in understanding. The three messengers looked at each other before the fat minister took out a blueprint and opened it in front of Sue. Sue. No, Viscount Sue. Oh no, Count Sue, since your title has been promoted, then according to the rules, your territory should be expanded accordingly. After some research, the Duke has finally decided to confer this land as your territory. Are you satisfied? Sue's eyes followed the fat minister's finger across the low-precision map of the Principality of Constantine. After looking at the new territory the Principality of Constantine gave him, he gave a cold laugh in his heart. The territory Duke Stantine gave Sue extended from his previous territory of less than 24 square kilometers. At first glance, it seemed to have expanded by several times. But if one looked carefully, they would find that this new territory belonged to Wine Count Wine. If Sue accepted this territory, it would be equivalent to stealing it from Count Wine. Duke Stantine was clearly doing this on purpose. This was without a doubt to destroy the cooperation between the Fresteck Chamber of Commerce and Count Wine. It was clear that Duke Stantine was already afraid of Count Wine's strength. Destroying the cooperation between the Fresteck Chamber of Commerce and Count Wine was to defeat Count Wine from the foundation. This was a very low-level trap. Not to mention Sue, even Kennard on the side saw through it with a cold smile. With his understanding of Sue definitely wouldn't fall for such a low-level trap. However, after Sue was silent for a bit, he said with a smile, "Thanks for the Duke's gift, I'll take this territory." Kennard had a look of surprise, but the three messengers had smiles on their faces. Sue also had a smile on his face as he looked at the three of them, as if he didn't know the danger. Chapter 619. Strictly speaking, without Duke Stantine's approval, all the territories controlled by the lords in the Principality of Constantine were illegal. So according to this standard, over 80% of Count Wine's territories were illegal. At first, Count Wine was just a small lord, but now his territories were taken from other lords. This was a tacit rule in the Principality of Constantine. Whoever had the bigger fist would take it and no one would question it. But now, Duke Stantine suddenly announced that he would give a portion of Wine's territory to Sue. In terms of law, this wasn't a problem because Duke Stantine wanted to give all the territories in the Principality of Constantine. But in reality, this was no different from slapping Count Wine's face. And giving this large territory to Sue was clearly sowing discord between Sue and Count Wine. The key problem was that territory was very important to any noble in the signs. It could even be said that the size of the territory represented everything to the noble. Duke Stantine's actions were clearly a plot. He was clearly throwing out bait for Sue and Count Wine to fight for it. If Sue and Count Wine really fell out because of this territory, it would naturally be what Duke Stantine wanted. Count Wine became so powerful because of the support of the New Flyer. If he fell out with the New Flyer and lost the support of the New Flyer, it was equal to giving Count Wine a fatal blow. Like this, Count Wine, who was a threat to Duke Stantine in the Principality of Constantine, wasn't a threat at all. Even if Sue and Count Wine wouldn't fall out because of this territory, the ownership of this territory would be a deep thorn between them that would affect their relationship. It had to be said that Duke Stantine's move was very smart. He used his status as Duke Stantine to easily resolve most of the threat from Count Wine. What was even more extreme was that he had announced Sue's new territory to the Principality of Constantine, letting all the lords in the Principality know about this matter. So all the lords in the Principality of Constantine stretched out their necks and waited. The combination of New Flyer and Count Wine was too terrifying. If their relationship wasn't destroyed, the other lords in the principality couldn't see any hope. However, Sui and Count Wine's reaction to this matter was out of everyone's expectations. First, Sui straightforwardly accepted Duke Stantine's offer, clearly indicating that he would accept this territory. Then the most surprising thing was that Count Wine didn't express any opinions on this matter. After Sui expressed his willingness to accept this territory, Count Wine immediately withdrew all his subordinates from this territory. It wasn't just the army, even the administrative staff he used to control this territory were withdrawn, clearly showing that he was giving up control of this territory. After that, the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's guards entered the territory. Following this, the Amrit Chamber of Commerce's construction team also entered the territory. They began to build factories with the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's logo, as well as workers' residences, which meant that the Frestek Chamber of Commerce had officially taken over this territory. During this entire process, New Flyer and Count Wine didn't have any conflict. Rather, when the New Flyer's guards and Count Wine's army came into contact, both sides were very friendly and didn't seem to be nervous at all. This made everyone's jaws drop. Count Wine could be considered invincible in the northern part of the duchy. Everyone thought that with his momentum, he wouldn't allow his territory to be taken away. But facing New Flyer, he didn't resist at all and didn't even raise any objections. Could it be he was that afraid of New Flyer? No one knew what Count Wine was thinking, but everyone knew what Count Wine did. Perhaps it was because he felt that his territory had decreased, but after this matter, Count Wine immediately launched an attack on two neighboring lords. In just a month's time, he completely defeated these two lords and took their territory. The territory of these two lords added together was much larger than the territory Duke Stantine had given Sui. Therefore, Count Wine's territory had increased by quite a bit. Half a month later, Duke Stantine used the same trick and gave Count Wine's territory to Sui. This time, this territory was far from Sui's territory, and there was a large piece of Wine's territory in between. However, Count Wine didn't raise any objections this time. He withdrew all of his subordinates from that territory and even withdrew all of his subordinates from the territory in between. He took the initiative to give up the territory separating Sui's two territories, allowing Sui's territory to be connected. Like this, Sui's territory had already surpassed a shocking 2,000 square kilometers. Count Wine, whose territory had been reduced once again targeted other overlords. This time, his attacks were even more ferocious. In less than a month, he defeated another 3 overlords and finally expanded his territory by quite a bit. After these 2 times, Count Wine's territory was now close to 20,000 square kilometers. It was even close to Duke Stantine's territory. Moreover, Count Wine's army had increased because of his continuous battles with other lords. He had over 50,000 troops and was only 10,000 less than the 60,000 that Duke Stantine had announced. In terms of actual battle strength, Count Wine's 50,000 subordinates had experienced many fierce battles. More importantly, they were equipped with the military magic machines provided by New Flyer, so their battle strength was undoubtedly much higher than Duke Stantine's. This had already been proven countless times in the battles between Count Wine and the other lords. With this comparison, more and more people in the Principality of Constantine believed that Count Wine would replace Duke Stantine and become the new duke. In this duchy, the only one who could stop Count Wine was Viscount Anklo in the south, right? However, when they thought about how Count Wine and Viscount Anklo were so strong, it was because they had received the support of New Flyer. Once the other lords lost the military magic machines provided by New Flyer, they didn't have the ability to compete with these two lords. Inferring from this, the one who decided the fate of the Principality of Constantine wasn't these two lords, but rather the New Flyer. Or rather, it was Sui. ###. At the end of summer, the seaside of the Principality of Constantine was still hot. Even though the sky was completely dark, the beach was still bustling with people coming and going. Today was New Flyer's weekly rest day. After the employees of New Flyer got off work, they didn't even eat as they changed into swimwear and headed to the beach. This public beach had been greatly developed by Sue, and now it had become a very suitable place to relax in the summer. There was a row of houses built on the beach that became various shops. They would be brightly lit at night, and there would be barbecue and wine. When night fell, the giant magic lamps around the beach would shine with incomparably bright light, lighting up the entire beach. People would gather in groups of 2s and 3s, laughing loudly as they dyed the beach into a city that didn't sleep. Sue and Steele were strolling on the private beach, looking at the bright lights and people in the distance. Steele couldn't help saying in an emotional voice, "I remember when we came here a year ago, this beach was still desolate and there wasn't a single person at night. But now it's this lively, it can even compare to the nights in Anvilmar City." Sue revealed a smile. "What? Do you miss Anvilmar City? Isn't the new Moon Troupe going to Anvilmar City to perform in a few days? If you want to go, you can go with them." Steele shook her head. "No, I'm just feeling emotional. Actually, from what I can see, Anvilmar City is already very backward. There are many places where it isn't convenient compared to Banta City. Not mentioning anything else, up until now, Anvilmar City still hasn't built a complete public transport system. Whenever I go to Anvilmar City, it's very inconvenient. This is something that can't be helped. A city's public transport system is a social welfare system. It can't be used to make money. To build a complete city's public transport system, one has to invest a large amount of money. Although the Lampari Kingdom's finances have greatly improved, they don't have the spare funds to invest in this right now," Sue said with a sigh. Steele looked at Sue. "You understand Her Majesty's difficulties quite well." Sue looked at Steele and revealed a smile before tapping her nose. "What? Are you jealous?" Steele gave a soft snort. "I wasn't jealous when you hugged her so tightly last time. Why would I be jealous now?" Sue broke out in laughter. When he carried Seveny down the cliff last time, he had fallen into the eyes of Steele and the others who were waiting at the bottom of the cliff. Steele didn't say anything, but she clearly minded it very much. "All right, it's impossible for anything to happen between me and Seveny, you should be clear on this." Sue held Steele's waist as he spoke in a soft voice. "Then why did she do this?" Steele rolled her eyes at Sue. "Don't think that I can't see that Her Majesty is interested in you. Although she hides it very well, I am also a woman and I can see what she's thinking." Sue knit his brows. "You're thinking too much, right? With her personality, if she was really interested in me, she wouldn't do that in front of you. Last time, maybe she was just putting on an act for the sake of negotiating with me." "No, you don't understand." Steele shook her head. "If a woman doesn't approve of a man in her heart, she definitely wouldn't do something this intimate. Could it be that you think Her Majesty is a frivolous person? Of course she isn't a frivolous person, but in the end it's impossible for the two of us to be together. She is the queen of the Lampari Kingdom, and I already have you as my wife, so it's impossible for us to be together no matter what." Sue shook his head. "Steele, just treat this as her being willful, all right?" Steele gave a shrug. "I don't care. If my husband can even move the heart of a queen, doesn't that mean that my eyes are outstanding? But Sue, do you really not care about this? Don't forget, recently, there have been many articles about the successor to the throne in the Lampari Kingdom's newspapers." "Successor to the throne?" Sue's heart skipped a beat. Chapter 620. Since Seveny's coronation, the successor to the Lampari Kingdom's throne had always been a large problem that had troubled countless people in the Lampari Kingdom. Lampuri XIII and King Eric had died and Seveny had taken the throne. In the Lampari Kingdom's royal family, only Seveny's second brother, His Highness Mayim, and Eric's only son, His Highness Prince William, had the right to the throne. Although His Highness Mayim was married, he didn't have an heir yet, and Her Majesty Seveni hadn't married yet. This meant that if something happened to Her Majesty Seveni, the only ones qualified to take the throne in the Lampari Kingdom were His Highness Prince William and His Highness Prince Mayim. But His Highness Prince William was King Eric's son, and the Eric Kingdom had poisoned Lampuri XIII, as well as starting a civil war with Her Majesty Seveni. So as the son of King Eric, His Highness Prince William was naturally excluded as a successor to the throne. And His Highness Prince Mayim had always been known as a coward in the kingdom. Whether it was Lampuri XIII being poisoned, King Eric's sudden death, or Queen Seveni's coronation, this prince had never expressed any opinions. He had always hidden in his fief, and lived a life cut off from the world, not contacting the outside world at all. This kind of person naturally couldn't inherit the throne. So looking at it like this, there wasn't a single suitable successor to the throne in the Lampari Kingdom. In the beginning, no one cared about this matter. But when the Lampari Kingdom's internal situation gradually stabilized and the kingdom began to prosper under Her Highness Seveni's leadership, the country's strength increased day by day. While the people of the Lampari Kingdom were grateful to Her Highness Seveni's wise leadership, they also began to care about her successor. The various newspapers of the Lampari Kingdom discussed this matter and finally came to a conclusion. The best way to solve this problem was for Her Majesty Seveni to get married. As long as it was Her Majesty Seveni's child, of course he would be the most suitable successor to the throne. After coming to this conclusion, there were many people in the Lampari Kingdom who were stirred by this matter. Her Majesty Seveni was the queen of the Lampari Kingdom. There was no need to mention her status. Moreover, although Her Majesty Seveni wasn't considered beautiful, she was still a first-class beauty. Moreover, she had a gentle personality and a kind smile. Even without her identity as a queen, from a girl's point of view, she was very outstanding. This noble, beautiful, gentle, and principled young queen, who wasn't even 24 years old, she still hadn't married yet and didn't even have a fixed partner. Not to mention the Lampari Kingdom, even in the signs, this was an anomaly. Moreover, Her Majesty Seveni's reputation had always been good. There had never been any rumors related to her. This didn't seem wrong. Before Lampuri XIII died, Her Highness Seveni often came into contact with Sui, so there were many rumors about her and Sui. But these rumors gradually disappeared with the changes in the Lampari Kingdom, and the more important thing was that Sui got married and had a child. After all, no matter what, whether it was Her Highness Seveni or Her Majesty Seveni, it was impossible for her to marry someone who already had a wife. Although in the minds of most people in the Lampari Kingdom, New Flyer and Sui had always had good reputations, there was no chance for them in this matter. But putting aside Sui, Her Majesty Seveni still hadn't shown any signs of being close to any man. This made many people in the Lampari Kingdom worried. If Her Majesty didn't get married, the problem of the successor to the Lampari Kingdom's throne would be a large hidden danger. So not only were there many people in the Lampari Kingdom concerned about Her Majesty Seveni's marriage, there were many nobles and ministers who used private or public channels to advise Her Majesty Seveni, hoping that she would seriously consider getting married. When Seveni came to the Principality of Constantine last time, she had complained to Sui in private. She said that the reason she came to the Principality of Constantine was because she was annoyed by those people. I don't know what they are thinking. It seems like they all want me to get married. Well, they want me to get married as soon as possible and give birth to children as soon as possible. What do they think I am? A machine to give birth to children? Thinking of the aggrieved look on Seveni's face when she complained to him last time, Sui couldn't help smiling. Turning to look at Steele, Sui said with a smile, "What? Even if Seveni needs a royal husband, it can't be given to a married man like me. What are you worried about?" Steele said with a soft snort, "That's not certain. If there is a need, I'm certain that she can do anything. Sui couldn't help rolling his eyes. Instead of worrying about this, why don't you worry about the elves? Elder Lysania gave me an ultimatum last time. If I can't pick an elven partner by the end of the year, she will consider using forceful methods. Forceful methods? Steele looked at Sui with a funny gaze. How forceful? Could it be that you want those elven beauties to rape you? Sui gave a shrug. That's not certain. Given Elder Lysania's personality, she is capable of doing anything. Steele pursed her lips into a smile. Isn't this a good thing for you? You must be looking forward to it, right? Sui rolled his eyes at her. If I was really looking forward to it, why would I wait for Elder Lysania to give me an ultimatum? Perhaps you like being forcefully treated by others, Steele said with a chuckle. Sui was instantly filled with rage. He pulled Steele over and slapped her high and bouncy butt. I think you're the one who likes being forcefully treated by others. Do you believe that I won't rape you right here if you keep talking? Steele looked at Sui with a flirtatious gaze. Come, I'll warmly welcome you. There was an evil flame that filled Sui's heart. He picked up Steele and released his magic, preparing to fly back to the manor on the cliff with Steele. But who would have thought that as soon as they moved, their expressions would change? Sui's body was on the way up, but all of a sudden, the magic in his body burst out violently, quickly setting up a blue magic shield outside his body. In the nearby sea, a huge current suddenly burst out, like a tornado, rushing directly toward the two. The tornado hit the magic shield, making a muffled sound. Sui's body, which had already risen into the air, was immediately sent flying by the huge impact. If Sui hadn't immediately released all of his magic and used flying magic to slow down the momentum, he would have definitely hit the cliff by the sea. Sui barely stabilized his body and looked down at Steele in his arms. Although she was shocked, she obviously didn't suffer any injuries. Only then did he feel relieved. He turned his head and looked around, but didn't see even a ghost. What surprised him even more was that he didn't even sense any fluctuation of magic elements. The reason why the attack was so sudden was that he and Steele only sensed the fluctuation of magic elements when the waterspout was launched. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been in such a difficult situation. But where was the enemy? Just as the question arose in his heart, two more torrents suddenly rose from the sea and attacked Sui and Steele with incomparable ferocity. Sui let go of Steele and let her float in the air. He raised his hands, and another magic shield fell down. At the same time, a water dragon went up to meet the attack. The two water dragons collided fiercely. Sui's body swayed, and he only felt that the magic in his body was about to be shaken off. He couldn't help but be shocked. This enemy was clearly not in the field of vision, but he was controlling the water dragons to attack from a distance, and it still had such terrifying power. From this, it could be seen that the enemy's magic power must be far beyond Sui's. He should be at least a powerful magician of the supreme magician level. Thinking of this, Sui was shocked and angry. He looked around and shouted into the darkness, "As a supreme magician, you actually have to hide your head and show your tail. This is a disgrace to all magicians." As soon as his voice fell, a burst of laughter suddenly sounded in the darkness. Then, in the void not far in front of Sui, the space seemed to be torn apart, and a dark and bottomless crack suddenly appeared. The laughter came from this crack, and then a black shadow appeared. When it comes to the disgrace of magicians, Chairman Su, you insist that you are a businessman, and even think that the identity of a businessman is much more important than that of a magician. You are more worthy than me, aren't you? Sui held Steele's hand, stretched out a finger, and scratched the palm of her hand. Then he stared at the figure that appeared from the crack in space. It was obvious that he was at least a senior magician, and said in a low voice, "At least I have never done despicable things like sneak attacks. You are already a supreme magician, but you still do this. Don't you feel ashamed?" Ashamed? The man laughed dryly. I, Azura, always do things according to what I like. Why would I feel such meaningless shame? The reason why I hid just now was because I wanted to tease you and this little girl. From your performance just now, your magic power is really good. No wonder people call you the most talented magician of the Lampari Kingdom's younger generation. It's a pity that you wasted your time and energy on business. If you put all your effort into magic research, I'm afraid that you would surpass me in less than 10 years. Thank you for your praise, but many people have said this to me many times. I don't need you to repeat it, Sui said coldly. Is that so? I really don't like to talk nonsense with people, especially with a dead person. The man's voice gradually turned cold. Now, obediently accept your death. Seeing the man's hand light up with a magic light, Sui took a deep breath. The opponent's magic power was far superior to his and Steele's. This should be the most difficult battle he had ever fought since he transmigrated to this world. But seeing the magic communicator flickering in Steele's pocket, Sui felt relieved. Chapter 6:21. Hong! A giant fireball brushed past Sui's body and slammed into the cliff. With a giant explosion sound, it created a shockingly deep hole in the cliff. Sui and Steele were sent flying in different directions, both of them panting a bit. They had only fought with this great magician for less than 3 minutes, but the two of them had already used all their skills and had been in danger several times. There was no other way. There was a difference in grade between a great magician and a great magician, so their strength couldn't be compared at all. Even if Sui was only a step away from becoming a great magician, before he broke through that boundary, he couldn't fight back against a great magician at all. But the two of them couldn't just sit there and wait for death. With great magician Camilla's teachings, the two of them had a clear understanding of a great magician's control over magic. It was because of this understanding that they could last this long under the fierce attacks of this great magician. Seeing the two of them dodge left and right under his attacks, occasionally using defensive spells to block some of the damage, preventing themselves from being seriously injured, the great magician suddenly broke out in laughter. I say, you two should give up as soon as possible. Don't think that someone will come to save you just because you're dragging it out like this. I've already set up a space isolation array around this area. Any sound or image from here won't be able to escape this space. No one will know that something happened to you. Sui gave a cold snort. Actually, when he was dodging the great magician's attacks, he had already noticed the existence of this spatial isolation array. This great magician was right. In this space isolated by the spatial isolation array, no sound or image could escape. This was something that had been verified when Elder Lysania and Sui were discussing matters. If it was during the day, the strange phenomenon in this space would easily attract the attention of others. But it was late at night and this was Sui's private beach, so there was no one here. Adding in the darkness, no one would notice anything strange here. Of course, Sui had already expected this and immediately thought of a countermeasure. What they needed to do now was stall for time as much as possible. Thinking of this, Sui stopped and raised his right hand. The great mage stared blankly for a moment before smiling and saying, "What? Have you finally decided to give up?" Sui sighed and nodded. "We might not be able to escape today, but we're going to die anyway. Can't you let us die with some understanding? We've never seen you before. We don't know what we've done to offend you that you wouldn't hesitate to sneak into this place to assassinate us." The great magician let out an unpleasant cackle. "You didn't offend me, but you." "No, Chairman Su, you've offended too many people." "All right, since you're about to die, I'll tell you. I came to kill you because I was invited by Duke Stantine. As for what exactly happened, you can slowly think about it when you get to hell." As soon as he finished speaking, the great magician waved his hand again, and countless dark red fireballs flew towards Sui and Steele. Sui and Steele looked at each other and nodded. They put down their hands and looked like they had given up on resisting. Seeing the reaction of the two, the great magician laughed again. Duke Stantine had offered a high price of 500,000 gold coins to get rid of Sui. He thought it would be very difficult, but he didn't expect it to be so easy. Boom, 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 boom. A series of fireballs hit Sui and steel, causing a series of intense explosions. The great magician chuckled, thinking that these two fellows had actually given up on resisting. Now that they were hit by the fireballs, they would definitely die without a complete corpse. It was a pity that the little girl called Steel was so beautiful, but now she had turned into a pile of meat. It was simply a waste. But after a while, his expression changed. There was something wrong with the sound of the fireballs hitting them. If they had really hit their bodies, they would have already turned into two piles of meat. How could there be such intense explosions? When the flames dissipated, the great magician looked over and found that there was a light blue barrier around Sui and Steel, completely covering them. When the fireballs hit them, they didn't cause any damage to them. The great magician looked at the light blue barrier and his expression changed. He gave a cold snort. Humph, great magician Camilla really is willing to give you such precious defensive magic items, and he actually gave you two of them. Sui and Steel looked at each other with smiles. Great magician Camilla was known for his poverty. How could he give them such precious defensive magic items? Actually, the defensive magic items they were using were not given to them by great magician Camilla, but rather the gift Elder Elucia had given them during their wedding. It said that this azure guard was a treasure passed down in the Nightsong tribe for several thousand years, and its defensive magic was very outstanding. Looking at it now, Elder Elucia's words were not false. The great magician looked over Sui and Steel before saying with a cold smile, "Very good, since you have this kind of treasure on you, then after I kill you, I'll be able to obtain a few good things. Let me tell you, even if you have this thing, you can't escape. I urge you to obediently accept your death. That way, perhaps I'll leave you with a complete." Before he could finish speaking, the great mage suddenly felt something strange. He raised his head and saw an extremely thick pillar of fire rapidly falling from the top of his head. Ragnaro's judgment. The great magician instantly revealed a shocked expression. This was a fire-forbidden spell. It had happened too suddenly and he had no time to dodge. He could only gather all the magic in his body and create a defensive magic barrier above his head. Hong! It was just like the judgment scenes that Sui had seen in countless movies on Earth. The giant pillar of flames fell from the sky and completely surrounded the great magician. The pillar of flames lit up the surrounding area, but it also made the great magician's shadow very clear. Looking from the side, the great magician was bathed in the pillar of flames, like he was being judged by a god. The pillar of flames only lasted for a few seconds before fading away. It had to be said, the great magician's strength was very outstanding. Even after being suddenly attacked by a fire-forbidden spell, he actually didn't die. Even his clothes weren't damaged at all. Other than his face being much more haggard and no longer having the arrogance from before, he was completely unharmed. The great magician paused before raising his head. Looking into the sky, he angrily shouted, "Which great magician is it? You're actually so shameless as to use a forbidden spell to attack. You're challenging the iron rules of us magicians." Humph! With a heavy cold snort, great magician Camilla slowly fell down from the sky, stopping between Sui, Steel, and that person. He looked at the great magician with a cold face and said, "Runa, you actually dared to assassinate my granddaughter and grandson-in-law. What iron rules of magicians do I have to talk to you about? Do you have the face to say this? Great magician Camilla?" The great magician's expression changed. "You recognize me? Nonsense. Other than a scum among great magicians like you, what other great magician would do such a shameless and despicable assassination? You are already a disgrace among us great magicians. You actually dare to talk to me about the iron rules of magicians? The Great Magician called Runa carefully looked at Great Magician Camilla and suddenly revealed a look of shock. He pointed at Great Magician Camilla with a look of disbelief as he loudly said, You've already grasped the spatial laws? No wonder I didn't notice you breaking my spatial isolation array. Great Magician Camilla's lips curled and he revealed a cold smile. What? Are you afraid? Let me tell you, I haven't truly grasped the spatial laws yet, but it's more than enough to deal with you. So just obediently accept your death for me. Seeing that Great Magician Camilla was about to make a move, Runa's face turned ashen. The reason why he accepted Duke Stantine's request to assassinate Sue and Steele was because Duke Stantine had publicly offered a shocking 500,000 gold coins. Secondly, he was confident that he could silently kill Sue and Steele without being discovered. Even if something happened and he was discovered, he had absolute confidence that there wouldn't be any problems. The strongest magician in New Flyer was Great Magician Camilla. According to the reports, Great Magician Camilla was a 4th grade Great Magician. Although he was a level higher than him, the difference in strength wasn't that big. Even if he couldn't beat him, he could still easily escape. But he never would have thought that Great Magician Camilla's magic power would be much higher than what the reports said. Not only did he surpass the level of a 4th grade Great Magician, he even surpassed the level of a 5th grade Great Magician and grasped the spatial laws. Even if Great Magician Camilla hadn't broken through and become an Archmagus, he had grasped the spatial laws. That meant that his understanding of magic had far surpassed him. If Great Magician Camilla hadn't grasped the spatial laws, he could have easily escaped, but now that Great Magician Camilla had grasped the spatial laws, as long as Great Magician Camilla didn't want him to escape, it would be very hard for him to escape with his spatial magic. Not to mention that Great Magician Camilla had used Ragnaro's trial without any warning, so he had taken the full damage of this forbidden spell. Even if he had used his own strength to block this forbidden spell, he had consumed most of his magic power. Even if he wanted to resist, he couldn't do anything. Thinking of this, Runa's face turned ashen and his heart was filled with endless regret. If he knew that Great Magician Camilla's magic power had increased this quickly, he wouldn't have tried to assassinate Sue just for the 500,000 gold coins. Seeing the glow of magic condensed in Great Magician Camilla's hands, Runa gave a long sigh in his heart. He lowered his hands and prepared to wait for death. Sue suddenly shouted, "Wait!" Great Magician Camilla turned to look at Sue with a frown. "What are you doing?" Sue flew over and pressed down on Great Magician Camilla's hand. He said with a faint smile, "Grandfather, isn't this a good chance to test it out? When I fought you before, those fellows said that it wasn't fun enough. Now that there is a live target in front of them that they can attack, they will definitely be very happy." Seeing the smile on Sue face, Great Magician Camilla immediately understood what Sue meant. He turned to look at Runa and nodded. "Not bad, this is indeed a good target." Chapter 622. Runa saw Sue and Great Magician Camilla looking at him with malicious gazes, and he felt a chill fill his heart. However, the current situation was not good for him. He couldn't fight or escape, he could only be manipulated by them. If Great Magician Camilla wanted to kill him, he wouldn't have a chance at all. Rather, if the other side wanted to do something, perhaps he could find a chance to live. Thinking of this, although Runa's face was ashen like his heart was dead, his mind was already working and he was prepared to grab any chance. However, Great Magician Camilla was watching him the entire time, so he didn't have a chance to gather his magic to use space magic to escape. Runa could only patiently wait. What made him feel strange was that the little girl named Steele was holding an iron box in her hand. She seemed to be muttering something to the iron box. Runa could feel a trace of magic fluctuations coming from the small iron box. Based on the situation, it should be some new magic machine made by New Flyer. But what use did this small iron box have? After around 10 minutes, a set of orderly footsteps came from the cliff. Based on the sound, it seemed like several hundred people had come at once. Runa was not surprised, rather he was happy. In this situation, the more people there were, the more chaotic it would be. The more chaotic it was, the more chance he had to escape. The orderly footsteps turned a corner on the cliff and came down from the side of the hill. After a while, where the beach connected to the hill, a group of orderly dressed soldiers appeared. Runa glanced over and was shocked. There were around 400-500 soldiers, and not only were there traces of magic fluctuations coming from their armor, which should be enchanted with magic arrays, even the strange things they were carrying were also releasing magic fluctuations. It was clear that they were all magic machines. Although he already knew that New Flyer had many different military magic machines, seeing such a complete set of military magic machines, Runa was a bit dazzled. Great magician Runa, right? Su-Yi suddenly spoke to Runa. Runa knit his brows and gave a soft snort. What? Does Chairman Su have something to say? Su-Yi revealed a faint smile. He pointed at the Frestec Chamber of Commerce guards in the distance and said, Great magician Runa, I believe that you already understand that you definitely can't escape from Grandfather's hands. However, I'll give you a chance to escape now. Although Su-Yi's tone was very impolite and made Runa feel very uncomfortable in this situation, he had no choice. He looked at the New Flyer guards in the distance and raised a brow. What chance? As long as you can last for 10 minutes under the attacks of our company's guards, I'll have Grandfather let you go. What do you think? Runa was first filled with rage. He was a respected great magician. What did Su-Yi actually say? That he could last 10 minutes under the attacks of his company's guards? What a joke. These were normal soldiers. He could crush to death with a single finger. Su-Yi raising this condition was simply the greatest humiliation to him. Then he was filled with joy. Su-Yi actually dared to look down on him like this. This was his best chance. Runa did not reply to Su-Yi and turned to Great Magician Camilla to ask, Great Magician Camilla, what do you say? Great Magician Camilla gave a shrug. Su-Yi is in charge here. All right. Runa turned to look at Su-Yi. Chairman Su, will you keep your word? Su-Yi said with a smile. Even if I don't keep my word, what can you do? You. Runa was filled with rage. He pointed at Su-Yi and wanted to curse, but he found that he couldn't say anything. The situation was stronger than the person. In this situation, he could only let Su-Yi do whatever he wanted. Thinking about it, Runa suppressed his anger and said in a deep voice, All right, Chairman Su, I hope you keep your word. Tell your Merchant Association guards to start attacking. Humph, not to mention 10 minutes, just these normal people. Even if I stood here and let them attack me for 10 hours, they wouldn't be able to touch me at all. Chairman Su, you're looking down on great magicians too much. Is that so? Su-Yi revealed a smile. I've never looked down on Grandfather. Runa looked at the smiling great magician Camilla and suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. These guards of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce, could it be that they really were strange? But turning to look at the soldiers in the distance, Runa calmed down. Even if these fellows were equipped with military magic machines, they were only a bit stronger than normal people. How could they be a threat to a great magician like him? All right, let them attack. Runa waved his hand and said, Great magician Runa, are you certain you're ready? Nonsense. Let them begin. All right. Su-Yi took the magic communicator from Steel's hands. Captain Hart, begin the attack. After giving the order, Su-Yi immediately pulled Steel and retreated with great magician Camilla. Runa looked at the three of them in confusion. He was thinking that if he was being attacked, why were they retreating so far away? Especially great magician Camilla. He was so far away, wasn't he worried that he would use his space magic to escape? But after that, Runa found that he didn't have time to think about this problem at all. First, countless magic glowing arrows were shot out from the guard's formation. Like a storm, they flew at Runa. Runa gave a cold laugh. These magic arrows with a bit of low-level flame magic, they wanted to threaten a great magician like him? This was simply a joke. Runa's body didn't move at all, he just used his magic to create a magic barrier around him. The magic arrows that filled the sky hit the magic barrier, but they couldn't even create a single ripple on the barrier. These magic arrows only had a third-grade fire magic array attached to them, so of course they couldn't break the magic barrier of a great magician. Runa gave a cold laugh as he watched the new flyer guards keep shooting magic arrows. He then turned to look at Sue-Yi in the distance with a cold laugh. Chairman Su, you wouldn't be so naive as to think that with this child's play, you would be able to make me surrender, right? Sue-Yi revealed a faint smile and didn't reply at all. Runa was filled with rage. He thought that this Sue-Yi was actually looking down on him. If it wasn't for this situation, he would have raised his hand to exterminate the several hundred new flyer guards and teach Sue-Yi a blood lesson. But after a while, Runa suddenly found that he was too naive. A single magic repeating crossbow naturally wasn't a threat to Runa, but the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's guards seemed endless as they kept shooting out magic arrows. Under the extremely high frequency of attacks, even though the magic barrier that Runa had set up didn't weaken at all, Runa could clearly feel that his magic was rapidly decreasing because of the magic arrows. Runa estimated in his heart, and then shockingly discovered that at this rate, his remaining magic wouldn't be able to last more than 10 minutes. At the thought of this, Runa could only suppress the shock in his heart. He raised his hand, and a few fireballs flew out, burning the large number of magic arrows that were coming at him to ashes. Compared to using a purely passive magic barrier to defend himself, this consumed much less magic. Sue-Yi and the other two couldn't help but smile when they saw Runa's sudden action. Grandpa, this great magician Runa is indeed much worse than you. When you practiced with the guards for the first time, you only took half a minute to notice the problem, but he only took 3 minutes to notice it now. Steele said with a smile. Great magician Camilla stroked his beard with a smile as he said with a nod, like this fellow definitely won't be able to last the third wave of attacks. He definitely won't last more than 10 minutes. Sue-Yi didn't participate in the conversation between the grandfather and grandson, rather he was watching the battle without turning. Although the new flyer guards had sparred with great magician Camilla several times before, it was all just practice. Whether it was great magician Camilla or the new flyer guards, they had scruples and couldn't use their full strength. But when they attacked Runa this time, they didn't have any scruples at all. Naturally, they could see the true strength of the new flyer guards. Based on their current performance, the attack power of the guards was without a doubt much stronger than when they practiced with great magician Camilla. Runa was at least a third-grade great magician, but under the attacks of the guards, he couldn't hold on this quickly and was forced to take the initiative to counterattack. However, Runa had discovered the problem too late. When Runa began to use magic to counterattack, the attacks of the new flyer guards changed again. Half of the guards continued to use their magic repeating crossbows to attack Runa with a dense rain of magic arrows. The other half took out the magic bazookas on their backs and aimed them at Runa in the air. Seeing the magic light coming from the magic bazookas, Runa gave a cold snort. Although the power of this strange object was obviously much greater than the magic arrows, it was still not a threat to him. Runa used magic to negate some of the magic arrows, and continued to maintain the magic shield, allowing the magic rockets from the individual magic rocket launchers to crash into him. The reason why Runa did this was to personally experience the might of the magic bazooka and then decide what to do next. However, when the first magic bazooka hit the magic barrier, Runa's heart was filled with regret. The rocket launcher didn't look very big, and the rockets it fired were also very small. However, when they collided with the magic barrier, they immediately exploded violently. The power of the explosion was actually comparable to a 6th tier or even 7th tier single target spell. Even with Runa's strength as a 3rd grade Great Magician, 6th and 7th grade single target spells wouldn't be a threat to him. However, if he wanted to completely defend against this power, it would consume quite a bit of his magic power. Not to mention that there wasn't just one magic bazooka, there were over 200 of them. When more than half of the 200 rockets accurately hit Runa's magic barrier, countless bright sparks exploded around Runa's body. It was as if fireworks had been set off in midair. With the countless explosions, Runa found that a large portion of his magic power had been consumed, leaving him with less than a third. Runa's heart was filled with shock. When he was fighting with Su-Yi and Steel, he hadn't used much magic power at all. What he had used the most was to defend against Great Magician Camilla's fire-forbidden spell, Ragnaros's Trial. Just to defend against this forbidden spell, he had used a third of his magic power. But this was a forbidden spell, so he could completely defend against it without using half of his magic power. This was already something to be proud of. However, after that, he had used more magic power to defend against the magic bazookas and the magic bazookas fired by the several hundred normal soldiers than he had to defend against Ragnaros's Trial. How was this possible? How could the attacks of the normal soldiers in less than 5 minutes compare to a forbidden spell? Chapter 623. However, this was just the beginning. Countless magic rockets hit Runa's magic barrier, and after countless bright fireworks exploded around him, a medium transport magic car arrived at the edge of the cliff. This transport magic car seemed to be carrying a lot of cargo, so it was very heavy and it made loud rumbling sounds as it drove on the road. When the transport magic car arrived at the edge of the cliff, Runa looked over and found that there were 16 thick cylinders in the back of the magic car that looked like a beehive. If this thing was taken apart, each cylinder looked like the magic bazookas the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's guards were using, but it was clearly several times bigger. 16 of these stout cylinders were arranged in a 14x4 pattern to form a square, which was placed diagonally on a shelf. The transport magic car was at the edge of the cliff, and these black cylinders were facing Runa, who was floating above the beach. Runa looked at the magic car and the 16 black holes behind the cargo box, as a trace of unease appeared in his heart for the first time. In the depths of these cylinders, it was like an evil dragon could be released at any time. When Runa had this thought, there were 3 clear sounds that came from the new flyer guards below. Then the 16 magic rocket launchers in the back of the transport magic car lit up with incomparably bright magic light. Hong! Although there were 16 magic rockets that were fired from the 16 magic rocket launchers, because they were fired at the same time, there was a strong muffled sound. Seeing the 16 magic rockets that were much stronger than the magic rockets used by the guards, Runa's expression became very ugly. He was certain that the power of these rockets was several times or even dozens of times greater than the previous ones. If possible, the best way for him to deal with it was to immediately dodge. But first, he had promised Su-Yi that he would face the attacks of the new flyer guards. Second, these 16 magic rockets were very fast. As soon as they were fired, they were already in front of him, so he didn't have time to dodge at all. Not to mention that the range of these 16 magic rockets was very large. If he rushed to dodge, he might not be able to dodge them all. If he wasn't prepared and was hit by one, even if it was him, he couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be injured. In an instant, Runa made the wisest decision. He stopped and gathered all his magic, pouring it all into the magic barrier. Hong, hong, hong. 3 magic rockets that were even thicker than Runa's head slammed into the magic barrier, immediately exploding with incomparably bright light. The violent explosion was accompanied by a shock wave that swept towards the sea. It actually caused a huge wave that was more than 2 meters high to appear in the calm sea at night. It was enough to show how powerful the 3 explosions were. Runa's body, which was suspended in midair, swayed violently. He felt something sweet in his throat, and a gush of blood rushed up to his throat. If it weren't for Runa's quick reaction and forcefully swallowing the blood back, he would have made a fool of himself in front of everyone. Although the power of the 3 magic rockets was all blocked by the magic barrier, Runa discovered that the explosive power of these 3 magic rockets was too great. Although he could withstand the power of the explosion, he couldn't completely offset the terrifying impact and shock of the explosion. As a result, his body couldn't withstand the aftershock and was injured. Runa checked his own magic and was even more shocked. After being hit by these 3 magic rockets, he only had less than 1/5 of the mana in his body left. In other words, the power of these 3 magic rockets was only slightly weaker than a forbidden spell like Ragnaros's judgment. Beautiful! Sui, who was watching the battle from afar, suddenly clapped his hands and praised, as expected of a great magician. You can actually last until now under such dense and powerful attack. Great magician Runa, as long as you can withstand the next attack, I will fulfill my promise and let you go. Runa took a deep breath and calmed the surging blood in his chest. He looked at Sui with a complicated expression and said, "Come." Sui nodded and lowered his head to give a few instructions to the magic communicator in his hand. Runa patiently waited for a while, but found that the new flyer guards didn't continue attacking. He couldn't help but feel a little strange, and couldn't help but urge Sui, "Chairman Su, where's the last attack? Why isn't it here yet?" Sui smiled and asked in return, "Great magician Runa, do you want to die that much?" Runa was startled, and then he flew into a rage. Who would be willing to seek death? "Chairman Su, are you trying to humiliate me?" "No, I didn't mean that." Sui shook his head. "But great magician Runa, I think you should be clear on one fact. You don't have much magic left, and the power of this last attack will far surpass the previous 2 attacks. Are you sure you can block it?" Runa was silent for a while before he snorted and said, "Nonsense. This is your condition, I don't want to agree, but will you agree? Will great magician Camilla agree?" "That might not be the case," Sui said with a faint smile. "Actually, you still have another chance to avoid the fate of death." Runa narrowed his eyes as he looked at Sui and laughed. "Chairman Su, although I admit that I'm not a person with a backbone, I am still a great magician. If you want to use this method to humiliate me, then you're dreaming. I've said it before, I'm not trying to humiliate you, I just want to make a deal with you," Sui said with a shake of his head. "Great magician Runa, can I ask you something?" "You said that someone asked you to assassinate me, so how much did that person pay? Why are you interested in this?" Runa asked back. "I'm very curious about how much I'm worth." Sui shrugged. Runa curled his lips. 500,000 gold coins. "How about it, isn't it worth a lot?" "Only 500,000 gold coins?" Sui's eyes opened wide in shock. "Isn't that too little? Am I that worthless?" Runa's eyes also opened wide as he looked at Sui with a look of disbelief. "Chairman Su, aren't you thinking too highly of yourself? 500,000 gold coins is a large sum, yet you think it's too little?" "Of course I think it's too little," Sui said without any politeness. "Let me tell you, our new flyer's monthly profit is over 1,000,000 gold coins. As the chairman, I get over 5,000,000 gold coins in dividends from the new flyer, but now you're telling me that I'm only worth 500,000 gold coins? You're looking down on me too much. 5,000,000 gold coins a year." Runa looked at Sui in shock. "Are you joking? How is that possible? Even your Lampari Kingdom's annual revenue isn't that much, right? You alone earn more than the entire Lampuri Kingdom in a single year? That's not strange," Sui said with a laugh. "Actually, the Lampari Kingdom's finances are very poor in my opinion. Just in the Lampari kingdom, there are many large nobles and merchants whose annual income far surpasses the kingdom's annual revenue. This is no secret. Great magician Runa, for you to be surprised by this, I can only say, you're too ignorant. You! Runa was filled with rage, but he found that at least in this aspect, Su Yi's criticism of him wasn't wrong. Thinking about it, Runa suppressed the anger in his heart and asked Su Yi in a muffled voice, "All right, you're saying all this nonsense to me, what do you want to say?" "I just want to ask you, compared to taking such a large risk to earn 500,000 gold coins, and it's hard to say if you'll actually get it, are you interested in earning at least 10,000 gold coins a year? Sometimes it can even reach 30 to 50,000 gold coins, and you can put it all into magic research. Moreover, you don't have to pay for the materials you need?" Great magician Camilla and Steele besides Su Yi instantly understood Su Yi's meaning and knit their brows at the same time. "Su Yi, this fellow wants to assassinate you. How could you do this?" Great magician Camilla said in a deep voice. "That's right. Su Yi, he almost killed us just now, how could you let him work for us?" Su Yi waved his hand. "This isn't anything, he was just bribed by someone else. Since someone else can bribe him, I should be able to do the same. Don't forget, I have plenty of money." Steele rolled her eyes at Su Yi and didn't try to persuade him anymore. She knew that since Su Yi had made his decision, he wouldn't easily change it. Great magician Camilla knit his brows to think, but he didn't say anything else. Seeing that the two of them didn't say anything else, Su Yi raised his voice to ask Runa in the distance, "How about it? Great magician Runa, are you interested in this kind of work?" Runa thought for a bit before asking Su Yi, "Chairman Su, you want to recruit me to work for you in New Flyer?" "Humph! You're too naive." No, this isn't naive." Su Yi shook his head with a smile. "You just said it, no one is willing to take the initiative to seek death. In this situation, if you don't agree to my conditions, there is only death for you. You tried to kill me and steal, so there is no problem even if I kill you. I'm willing to give you a chance and let you make a choice. This is already very benevolent. Alright, you can choose now. Do you want to die or work for me?" Runa gave a bitter laugh. "Do I have a choice?" Chapter 624. A shocking piece of news quickly spread through the entire Principality of Constantine. Count Wine had officially declared war on Duke Stantine. Although according to the previous situation, everyone knew that Count Wine would have a day where he would fight Duke Stantine. But no one would have thought that this day would come so quickly. No matter how fast Count Wine's development was, he had just annexed a few small lords. Even if his strength had greatly increased, he hadn't stabilized the situation of his new territory and he had been in constant battles, so he should rest for a while. How could he directly start a war with Duke Stantine, who was the strongest in the duchy? Not to mention that Duke Stantine had been the duke for over 30 years, so no one could predict how much power he had accumulated. Count Wine rashly chose to declare war on Duke Stantine. It really wasn't a wise decision. But just like when Count Wine started fighting with the other lords, when Count Wine and Duke Stantine started fighting, Duke Stantine's troops couldn't stop Count Wine's attacks at all. They kept retreating from the beginning. In just half a month, Count Wine's army had advanced 200 kilometers into Duke Stantine's territory, taking over a third of Duke Stantine's territory. The lords that were looking forward to a fierce battle between Count Wine and Duke Stantine, hoping that both sides would suffer heavy losses or that Duke Stantine would teach Count Wine a lesson, but after seeing this situation, they all fell silent. Very soon, there were calls for changing dukes in the Stantine duchy. Seeing that they couldn't stop Count Wine's advance, the other lords began to support Count Wine as the new Duke Stantine. There were even some lords that praised Count Wine, saying that he could become the first duke in the history of the Principality of Constantine to unify the Principality of Constantine and turn it into a country. If Count Wine could complete this, he would become the greatest duke in the history of the Principality of Constantine. He would definitely write a beautiful chapter in the history of the Principality of Constantine. Suddenly, the situation in the Principality of Constantine changed. Duke Stantine had received the support of a bunch of lords before, but after Count Wine and Duke Stantine officially fought, the lords that supported Duke Stantine immediately changed sides. In the blink of an eye, Count Wine seemed to have become the best candidate for the new Grand Duke. However, Count Wine himself didn't feel any joy at all. ####, Chairman Su, this is the battle plan for the next period of time, please take a look. Count Wine handed over the thick plan with both hands in a respectful manner. It was completely different from the arrogance he had in front of Su Yi before. He even led an army to attack Su Yi's territory in a fit of anger. Now Count Wine couldn't show any arrogance in front of Su Yi. Instead, he was respectful to Su Yi and didn't dare to show any arrogance. Sometimes, Count Wine felt angry and humiliated by his own attitude. But he couldn't do anything about it. Although to outsiders, especially to the other lords of the Principality of Constantine, he could be said to be awe-inspiring. Even if he fought with Duke Stantine, he could still defeat him. He was the most famous person in the Principality of Constantine. But he was very clear that all of this was based on the new flyer's support for him. If he lost the support of the new flyer, he would be no different from the other lords of the Principality of Constantine. If Su Yi was dissatisfied, Su Yi could immediately support another lord to replace him. And as long as he cut off the military magic machines, his army's battle strength would be reduced to 0. Everything he had right now would be for naught. Sometimes, Lord Wine wanted to give up all the military magic machines because he felt that with his territory, manpower, and resources, he could contend with any lord in the duchy. He wouldn't be at a disadvantage even if he faced Duke Stantine. But he was also clear that if he really lost the military magic machines, his soldiers who were used to using the military magic machines wouldn't be able to compare to the soldiers he had before. Using new flyers' military magic machines was like drinking poison to quench one's thirst. If he didn't use them, he would be done for, but if he kept using them, he would also be done for. Count Wine was very helpless with this situation. He couldn't think of a way to solve it, so as time passed, he gave up on the idea of solving this problem. He had already made a decision in his heart. Since Su Yi wanted to use him as a chess piece, then he would strive to be a useful chess piece. Anyway, Su Yi was only interested in earning money. He wasn't that interested in becoming a lord and having the power to control the life and death of all the people in his territory. As long as he followed Su Yi's orders, he would definitely become the most powerful duke in the Principality of Constantine. Even if he had to listen to Su Yi's arrangements. Su Yi took the battle plan and only glanced over it before putting it to the side. Count Wine, I don't care about the details of your battle plan. I only care about whether you can achieve the goal I want you to achieve. And in the process of achieving this goal, no matter what support you need from me and New Flyer, I will do my best. Looking at Su Yi's sincere gaze, Count Wine cursed in his heart. This Su Yi was simply the most hypocritical villain. He clearly controlled the entire Principality of Constantine, but he pushed him to the front to risk his life for him. He kept fighting with the other lords in the duchy while he hid in the back and did nothing. Even though he thought this, Count Wine's face still showed a smile and nodded, yes. Chairman Su, this is where we need to resupply. Please take a look. Su Yi took the supply statistics and looked at it seriously. After a while, he frowned. Count Wine, isn't the consumption of magic arrows a bit too high? In this half a month, You've fought with Duke Stantine 5 times, and you've used 100,000 magic arrows? But based on the results, Duke Stantine's side has lost less than 10,000 soldiers. Could it be that you need to use an average of 10 magic arrows to kill an enemy? Count Wine said in a deep voice. Chairman Sue, it's hard to determine the situation on the battlefield. Duke Stantine's soldiers have a tight defense, and it's hard for magic arrows to kill them, so the consumption is a bit higher. Is that so? Then do you have a way to solve this? Sui asked. I do. Since the other side has a way to defend against our normal military magic machines, then as long as Chairman Sue can provide me with higher-level military magic machines, I can easily defeat Duke Stantine. Count Wine said. Sui raised his head and looked at Count Wine with a smile that wasn't a smile. What kind of high-level military magic machines do you want? It doesn't need anything too high-level. I saw your new Flyer's magic rocket launchers last time, and they were very powerful. If my subordinates were equipped with these magic rocket launchers, I think Duke Stantine's army wouldn't be able to resist. Sui tapped the armrest of the chair and thought for a bit before saying, It isn't impossible to provide you with a portion of these magic rocket launchers. But Count Wine, up to now, our company has provided you with military magic machines, and most of them are on credit. The magic rocket launchers are indeed powerful, but they are also very expensive. Just one magic rocket launcher costs 700 gold coins, and the matching magic rocket launcher costs 30 gold coins. Are you sure you can afford it? Count Wine gave a cold snort. The reason you're willing to give me these military magic machines on credit is because you want me to risk my life for you, so what's the point of saying all this nonsense? Of course, he couldn't say this on the surface. Count Wine thought for a bit before replying. How about this, Chairman Sue? According to the old rules, I'll give you another piece of territory. What do you think? Sui shook his head. Too much territory doesn't mean much to me. This territory is enough for our new flyer to develop. Giving me a bit more territory doesn't make any difference to me. Count Wine immediately spread his hands. Then what do we do? I don't have money. Seeing Count Wine's shameless face, Sui couldn't help laughing. Count Wine was clearly going all out. He knew that Sui wouldn't take the initiative to do these things, and for a while, Sui wouldn't find a new lord to replace him. I don't need territory for now, and I don't lack money. The only thing I need right now is people. Sui said with a serious expression. People? Yes. Count Wine, let's sign a new agreement. From today onwards, as long as it's a territory you take, our new flyer will have control of half of the people in that territory. Simply put, I want half of the people. Half. Count Wine's expression was a bit ugly. Isn't that too much? If you take away all the young men, then what will happen to my territory? Don't worry. Sui waved his hand with a smile. The people I need aren't young men. On the contrary, in many of the factories under our company, we need adult women. Is that so? Count Wine looked at Sui in confusion. Apart from being used to vent desire and give birth to children, what use were adult women? If he really wanted to pick women, then wouldn't those young and beautiful girls be more attractive? Count Wine suddenly remembered that the two maids he gave to Sui, Liz and Linda, were always by Sui's side. They seemed to be very liked by Sui. Perhaps Sui really did have a special hobby in this area. Sui didn't care about the strange thoughts in Count Wine's mind. He took out the agreement he prepared beforehand for Count Wine to take a look. Count Wine glanced over it and signed his name. He could only listen to Sui's arrangements, so it didn't matter how much he read it. After signing the agreement, the two discussed the direction of their future cooperation. Count Wine then left Sui's private manor. After Count Wine left, Sui got up and returned to his bedroom. As soon as he opened the door, Elder Elucia and Elder Lysania looked over. Elder Lysania looked over Sui before saying in a soft voice, Take it off. Chapter 6:25. Su-yi didn't hesitate and quickly took off all his clothes, including his underwear. He was like a newborn baby in front of Elder Elucia and Elder Lysania. The two elders didn't have any strange expressions. They beckoned for Su-yi to come over and carefully observed his body from top to bottom. Then, they used their fingers to explore every inch of Su-yi's skin. This examination of Su-yi's body was slightly different from the one they did to let Su-yi master the elven meditation method. After the examination, there was a faint blue magic glow that came from the fingertips of the two elders at the same time. When it passed over Su-yi's body, it left a light blue mark on his skin. This light blue mark flickered twice and gradually disappeared, as if it had sunk directly into Su-yi's body. This action seemed like a heavy burden for the two elders. The two of them working together only left around 20 lines that weren't that long on Su-yi's body before taking their hands back. At the same time, they slowly let out a sigh of relief, looking like they were very tired. Su-yi, activate it, Elder Lysania said. Su-yi nodded. With a thought, the mana in his body circulated in an instant. Countless flickering blue lines appeared on his naked body, almost enveloping his entire body. These lines densely covered his entire body. Apart from his face, they didn't even miss out on his buttocks. At this time, Su-yi was like a person covered in blue light and emitting blue light. It looked very strange. The fluctuations are very stable. There shouldn't be a problem. Elder Lysania nodded and continued. Su-yi, try using a spatial spell. Su-yi hesitated for a moment and fully activated the mana in his body. The flickering blue lines on his body immediately responded. He felt the mana in his body circulate extremely smoothly and quickly. In just a moment, it had completely condensed in his right palm. Then, a small black ball that seemed to absorb light appeared above his right hand. Don't stop. Keep it like this, Elder Lysania instructed. Su-yi continued to circulate his mana, and the black ball in his hand steadily floated above his right palm, motionless. Seeing this, Elder Elucia smiled and nodded. Chairman Su, you are indeed very talented in magic. It took you less than half a month to master spatial magic to this extent. Elder Lysania also nodded. Not bad. At this rate, you might be able to master spatial teleportation in less than half a year. As soon as the two elders finished speaking, the black ball in Su-yi's right palm suddenly flashed with a small light pattern. Then, the black ball trembled. Su-yi bitterly smiled and said, Elders, you are praising me too early. I can't hold on much longer. That's nothing. Keep going and see how long you can last, Elder Lysania said. All right, I'll give it a try. Su-yi continued to circulate the mana in his body and tried his best to maintain the most basic spatial spell, Devouring Sphere. However, maintaining the Devouring Sphere required a terrifying amount of mana. Even though his mana had already surpassed that of ordinary 9th-tier magicians, he still hadn't reached the level of a great magician. Therefore, he still couldn't control the Devouring Sphere as he wished like a great magician. Therefore, his mana consumption was extremely fast. After persevering for another 2 minutes, more and more bright white patterns flashed on the surface of the Devouring Sphere. The Devouring Sphere also began to tremble more and more violently. Seeing that Su-yi was still able to maintain the Devouring Sphere's general shape and prevent it from completely collapsing, Elder Elucia and Elder Lysania exchanged astonished glances. Spatial magic was the most difficult element of magic to master. Even if a great magician had a deep understanding of spatial magic, it was still very difficult to control and use spatial magic. For someone like Su-yi who couldn't maintain the devouring ball because he didn't have enough magic, being able to maintain the general shape of the devouring ball was something that was almost impossible. However, Su-yi did it. Moreover, He could maintain the devouring sphere's general shape for 2 minutes. It could be seen that Su Yi's control over his mana and the magical elements in the spells he used had reached an astonishing level. From this point, it could be seen that Su Yi was truly an outstanding magical genius. The two elders looked regretful at the same time. If Su Yi was willing to spend all his energy and time on studying magic, or just put in more effort, his achievements in magic would not be limited to his current level. If he was willing to do so, he would have become a great magician long ago. How would he have been almost assassinated by that great magician Runa? If not for the danger that Su Yi encountered, Elder Elucia and Elder Lysania wouldn't have thought of using Mageweth blessings on Su Yi so that he could temporarily break through the boundary between a great magician and use spatial magic with restrictions. Mageweth blessings were a secret of the elves. Under normal circumstances, the two elders would definitely not use it on a human. However, Su Yi was now related to the huge interests of the two elven tribes, the Nightsong tribe and the Moon Shadow tribe. If anything happened to him, it would be an extremely serious blow to the two tribes. It might even affect the future of the two tribes. Now, the Nightsong tribe and the Moon Shadow tribe were developing very well. The lives of the elves in the tribes had changed greatly, and there was a chance for them to truly integrate into human society, allowing them to continue living on this continent. The two elders would definitely not miss such a good opportunity. And the key to all of this was Su Yi. If Su Yi died, the new leader of the New Flyer might not really consider the development of the two elven tribes like Su Yi did. It would also be difficult for the two elders to trust another human like they trusted Su Yi. So, Su Yi definitely couldn't die in an accident. So, even if the two elders had to expose the secret of the elves that had been passed down for thousands of years, they still had to use the Mageweth blessings on Su Yi. All of this was in hopes that Su Yi would have a way to save his life in a moment of danger. The Mageweth blessings could temporarily increase the speed of a magician's magic, indirectly increasing their magic, allowing the magician to use magic above their level. Su Yi was already on the verge of becoming a great magician, so if he jumped levels, he would be able to use spatial magic normally. Based on the current results, because of Su Yi's outstanding talent for magic, everything was going very smoothly. It was believed that as long as the Mageweth blessings were complete, Su Yi would be able to grasp the most important teleportation magic under the strict guidance of Great Magician Camilla. This magic could instantly teleport a magician far away, which would be enough to save Su Yi's life in a moment of danger. Although Runa didn't even have a chance to escape when he met Great Magician Camilla, that was because Great Magician Camilla's magic power had reached the peak of the Great Magician level and was only a step away from becoming an Archmagus. He had even touched a part of the spatial laws, so Runa didn't even have a chance to use teleportation magic to escape. Normally speaking, there wouldn't be a powerful Archmagus that would lower themselves to assassinate Su Yi. As for a direct attack? What was the benefit of risking a war with the entire New Flyer? Not to mention that with New Flyer's current strength, even if an Archmagus personally came, they wouldn't have any advantages. While these thoughts quickly flashed in the minds of the two elders, Su Yi already couldn't hold on any longer. The swallowing orb shook violently before quickly shrinking, disappearing without a trace after a while. Seeing this scene, a trace of surprise flashed in Elder Elucia and Elder Lysania's eyes again. Actually, they had already prepared all kinds of defensive measures, preparing for any unexpected situations when Su Yi lost control of his magic. But they never thought that Su Yi would be able to draw out his magic bit by bit in this situation, making the swallowing orb disappear in the most gentle way possible. Just based on this, it could be seen that Su Yi's control over his magic was very shocking. However, for the two elders, the stronger Su Yi's magic talent was, the better it was for them. Su Yi seemed very dissatisfied. Looking at his empty right hand, he gave a sigh and shook his head. It really is a pity that I still can't completely control this swallowing orb. If I want to control the much more difficult teleportation magic, it'll be much harder. Elder Elucia said with a faint smile. No, Chairman Su, although the swallowing orb is the most basic spatial magic, it represents the foundation of all spatial magic. Letting you master this magic is mainly to let you experience the characteristics of spatial magic, so that you can learn other spatial magic more easily. Yes, in theory, as long as you can master a spatial magic, you will be able to use any spatial magic as long as you have sufficient magic power. Since you can master the swallowing orb, you will definitely be able to use teleportation magic, Elder Lysania added. When I have sufficient magic power. Sui frowned and said with a wry smile, the problem is that I don't have enough magic power at all. Even a basic spatial magic like the swallowing orb can only be maintained for such a short time. How can I sustain the consumption of teleportation magic? Why do you think we gave you the Mageweth blessing? Elder Lysania glared at Sui. Let me tell you, the Mageweth's blessing doesn't just increase the speed of your mana condensation and your control over magical element. More importantly, with the Mageweth's blessing, you'll be able to reduce the effects of spatial elemental fluctuations on you when you're teleporting. That's why you'll consume very little mana when using teleportation spells. Now that you can maintain the swallowing orb for 3 minutes, you can use teleportation magic for 3 minutes, or even longer. 3 minutes? How far can I teleport? Sui asked the question he was most concerned about. I don't know now. Elder Lysania shook her head. The speed of teleportation depends on each mage's understanding of spatial magic and their usage of teleportation magic. Every mage is different. But with your talent, I think it shouldn't be too bad. 3 minutes. You should be able to teleport a kilometer away. A kilometer. Sui thought for a while and nodded. That should be enough to escape from danger. Generally speaking, it shouldn't be a problem. Elder Elucia nodded. Actually, the most important thing is that you don't put yourself in too much danger. And with your talent, I believe that you will be able to break through to become a great mage in a few years. At that time, even without the help of the Mageweth blessing, you will be able to use teleportation magic at will. Sui laughed, and thought that Elder Elucia thought too highly of him. Although he was only a step away from becoming a great mage, it was very difficult for him to take this step. Many mages could only stay at the 9th tier for their entire lives, and were unable to take this step. Although he was very confident that he could cross this threshold, to say that it would only take a few years, he really didn't dare to be sure. When he turned his head, he saw Elder Lysania frowning slightly, seemingly deep in thought. Sui asked in surprise, "What's wrong? Elder Lysania, is there a problem?" Elder Lysania pondered for a moment and suddenly asked, "Sui, do you want to mate with me?" Chapter 626. After the hottest summer passed, the battle between Count Wine and Duke Stantine became even more intense. Duke Stantine had actually sent an assassin like Great Magician Runa to assassinate Sui, causing the new flyers' support for Count Wine to increase. Not only did they provide large amounts of military magic machines to Count Wine, they also bought large amounts of resources from the Lampari Kingdom, the Kingdom of Ruhr, and the other countries that they cooperated with. This completely solved Count Wine's worries, allowing him to fight Duke Stantine with all his might. It was even the first time the new flyer directly intervened in a battle between lords in the Principality of Constantine. In the battle between Count Wine and Duke Stantine, they had sent out the most elite guards of the new flyer. With the terrifying firepower of the new flyer guards that was several times stronger than Count Wine's subordinates, Duke Stantine couldn't resist at all. In just 2 months, Count Wine led his subordinates to attack the capital of the Principality of Constantine, Faraday City. Duke Stantine saw that there was no hope in resisting, so he burned the glorious Duke's manor that he had spent several decades building to ashes, and he was buried in the sea of flames. Following this, several lords in the Principality of Constantine submitted to Count Wine and elected him as the new Duke Stantine, calling him Duke Wine. The first thing Duke Wine did after taking over the position of Duke was to ask the other lords in the duchy to disarm themselves and accept the leadership of the Duke's manor. Most of the feudal lords agreed, while only a few of them refused. Among them was the famous Viscount Anclo, who could call the wind and rain in the south of the Stantine duchy. If a normal lord dared to resist Duke Wine, they would be met with Wine's merciless attacks. In fact, that was what Wine did when he worked. A week after he issued the order to disarm, Duke Wine immediately sent troops to suppress the lords who resisted his order. He easily defeated them and unceremoniously took their territories into his hands. However, Duke Wine didn't do anything to Anclo, who was also resisting his orders. Both sides were extremely peaceful and restrained, as if there would be no conflict at all. In fact, everyone in the Principality of Constantine knew that Anclo and Wine's biggest backer was the new flyer, or rather, Sui. Although these two lords could call the wind and summon the rain in the Principality of Constantine, in reality, whatever they wanted to do had to depend on the mood of the new flyer and Sui. This was a fact that made people feel helpless. The support of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce was important to any side. If the Frestec Chamber of Commerce gave up on one side, that side would definitely be defeated by the other side. Or to put it more bluntly, only the new flyer, or rather, only Sui, could decide the internal situation of the Principality of Constantine. What made everyone puzzled was that since the new flyer was so powerful, why didn't they just send their troops and conquer all the lords in the Principality of Constantine instead of choosing Anclo and Duke Wine's forces? Or he could just choose to support one side and help that side rule the Stantine duchy. Wouldn't that give him even more benefits? Actually, I can do that. Sui looked solemnly at Anclo and Duke Wine, who were sitting on his left and right respectively. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, no one in the Principality of Constantine would believe that Anclo and Duke Wine, who were fighting for control of the Principality of Constantine, would be sitting opposite each other calmly. They even had smiles on their faces, as though they weren't enemies, but friends instead. The reason why I didn't do that is because I feel that it would cause too much damage to the Principality of Constantine. It wouldn't be beneficial to the development of the new flyer in the Principality of Constantine. Sui continued. Anclo took a sip of his tea. He looked at Duke Wine, who had a smile on his face, but there was an ominous glint in his eyes. He said with a faint smile, "Chairman Su, let me guess. Your biggest worry is that the Stantine duchy being in chaos for a long time will seriously affect the population, right?" "That's right." Sui nodded. "Our company is in urgent need of manpower. The population of the Principality of Constantine is very important to me, and I don't want them to be affected by the war." Anclo's face sunk a bit. "Chairman Su, forgive me for being blunt. If it wasn't for you supporting Count Wine wouldn't have the guts to attack other lords, let alone challenge Duke Stantine." Duke Wine's brows knit together as he angrily glared at Anclo. "What? Viscount Anclo, are you looking down on me? How about we go back and see who's better?" Anclo looked at Duke Wine with disdain and coldly snorted, "If it wasn't for Chairman Su stopping me, I would have already beaten your motley crew." Duke Wine was instantly enraged. He suddenly stood up and pointed at Anclo as he shouted, "Good, then we'll go back and fight. Let's see who's the motley crew." Anclo was about to say something, but Sui gave a cold snort. The two immediately fell silent as they looked at Sui. "I don't care if you don't like each other, but since you're here, sit down and properly talk." Sui coldly looked over. The two glared at each other before sitting down at the same time. Seeing the two holding back their anger, Su-yi slightly knit his brows. With their attitudes, how could he expect them to coexist peacefully and work together for the development of the Principality of Constantine? If possible, Su-yi really wanted to do what many lords in the Principality of Constantine had guessed. He wanted to eliminate the new Flyers guards and wipe out all opposition in the Principality of Constantine. He wanted to bring the Principality of Constantine under his control. That way, no matter how he wanted to develop the Principality of Constantine, he would be able to do whatever he wanted. He wouldn't be as restrained as he was now. However, the manpower problem he was worried about was not only the new Flyers factories, but also the new Flyers guards. Even though the new Flyers guards were constantly expanding, there were now close to 3,000 of them. Equipped with all kinds of military magic machines, long-term training, and high quality, the nearly 3,000 guards filled with dwarven and elven warriors were extremely powerful. In a head-on battle, they could easily defeat more than 10,000 enemies. However, they were too few in number. While they could protect the new Flyers' main base, they were far from enough to rule the entire Principality of Constantine. That was why Su-yi had to find a powerful lord in the Principality of Constantine to act as his agent. He could use this agent to reform his plans for the Principality of Constantine. Anclo and Duke Wine had their pros and cons in this regard. Anclo was outstanding and had a clear understanding of the situation. His ideas were also quite similar to Su-yi's. If he cooperated with Su-yi, it would be easier for him to complete his plans for the Principality of Constantine. But Anclo had a flaw that Su-yi was very worried about, which was that he had great ambitions. In other words, he had great ambitions, so it was hard for this kind of person to be willing to submit to others. He might not listen to Su-yi's arrangements in the future. On the other hand, Duke Wine couldn't compare to Anclo in other aspects, but he obeyed Su-yi's orders and was very suitable as a puppet. Su-yi didn't have the ability to eliminate both of them for the time being, so he chose to support both of them at the same time and let them balance each other out. At least for now, the two of them had to gain the support of the new Flyer, so they would make enough concessions to Su-yi. Today, Su-yi was able to gather both of them at the same time because of this. After a pause, Su-yi asked Anclo, "Anclo, I remember that your dream is to let the people of the Principality of Constantine live a good life, right?" Anclo nodded. "Yes, this is my dream that will never change. But Chairman Su, the Principality of Constantine has been embroiled in the flames of war for a year now. This is not what I want." Su-yi nodded and didn't respond. Instead, he turned to Duke Wine and asked, "What about you, Duke Wine? What is your dream?" Duke Wine pursed his lips. "I don't have such lofty dreams. I just want to live a better life." "Vermin!" Anclo snorted. Duke Wine glared and was about to fly into a rage. Su-yi waved his hand and stopped him. "All right, since the two of you don't have high requests, it's much simpler. Anclo, you've seen Banta City before, so I believe that you should be very clear on how much Banta City has changed under the influence of our Frestek Chamber of Commerce. The lives of the people of Banta City have been greatly improved." Anclo nodded and turned to look in the direction of the Lampari Kingdom with a bit of longing in his eyes. The Banta City of that time really was the most vibrant city I've ever seen in my life. If every city in our Principality of Constantine could become like Banta City, even if I died now, I wouldn't have any complaints. "You don't need to die." Su-yi revealed a smile. Su-yi revealed a faint smile. "As long as you work closely with our new Flyer, naturally the Principality of Constantine will become like Banta City. The people of the Principality of Constantine will become as vibrant as the people of Banta City." Anklo was silent for a bit before slowly nodding. Chairman Su, I believe that you have this ability. Now, in this private territory of yours, the lives of the people are no different from those in paradise. If you can let all the people of the Principality of Constantine live like this, I'm willing to do anything you want me to. Even if you become Duke Stantine, I won't have any objections. Duke Wine gave a snort. Then what do I do? Do I go back to being the Count? Anklo's expression turned cold. What? Are you qualified to be compared to Chairman Su? Of course I'm not qualified to be compared to Chairman Su. But since I'm already Duke Stantine, how can I let Chairman Su take my position? Duke Wine said. Anklo was a bit confused. Then what do you think we should do? Very simple. Duke Wine's expression suddenly became excited. Duke Wine's expression suddenly became very excited. If it was me, if Chairman Su has this intention, he should be the king. Chapter 627. King. This name only stayed in Su Yi's mind for less than a second before he threw it far away. Su Yi was very clear that he didn't have any talent in politics, so if he became the king, it wouldn't be a good thing. So before Duke Wine, there were people who had privately mentioned to him that since the new flyer controlled most of the Black Rice Wasteland and most of the land in the Principality of Constantine, he could establish his own kingdom and become the king. However, Su Yi had always ignored this suggestion. First, he wasn't interested in becoming the king. Second, with the new flyer's current strength, it wasn't appropriate to establish a country. The new flyer's strength wasn't enough to support a country. So from beginning to end, Su Yi treated the new flyer as a normal company. The only difference between them and other companies was in terms of military magic machines. But in Su Yi's heart, what he cared about the most would always be the civilian magic machines. After discussing with Anklo and Duke Wine, after confirming that the Principality of Constantine had to be stable, letting the people of the Principality of Constantine live in peace and develop the Principality of Constantine, Su Yi gave the related plans to Anklo and Duke Wine, letting them go back and think about how to cooperate. He drove the magic car and left the Principality of Constantine. When passing by the Black Rice Wasteland, Su Yi inspected Black Rice City as usual. After confirming that Black Rice City was developing according to the established path, he came to the border between the Black Rice Wasteland and the Sac Kingdom to the north. After several months of construction, the fortifications in the north of the Black Rice Wasteland were already taking shape. The large fortifications made of reinforced concrete blocked off the north of the Black Rice Wasteland, almost stopping the Sac Kingdom from entering the south through the Black Rice Wasteland. After a discussion with Commander Lantis and confirming that the new flyer would continue investing in these fortifications, Commander Lantis promised Su Yi that as long as there were enough resources, the Western Army would finish the initial fortifications by next year. They would be finished in 3 years, cutting off all hope of the Sac Kingdom invading. After Su Yi bid farewell to Commander Lantis, he didn't return to the Principality of Constantine. Rather he went east and drove to the Lampari Kingdom. Even when Seveni specially invited Su Yi to her coronation ceremony, Su Yi didn't return to the Lampari Kingdom. So this time, it was Su Yi's first time returning to the country that he had lived in for many years after transmigrating, which could be considered his second home. After 3 hours of fast driving, Su Yi made a turn when he was about to enter the Falling Rain Road, heading north into the Falling Rain Forest. No matter how Banta City was developed, the Falling Rain Forest was still in its original state. Su Yi drove the magic car for less than 10 kilometers along the road he had opened for the Dwarven tribes before he had to put down the magic car and head to the Falling Rain Forest. When he came to the edge of the Falling Rain Forest, there was a figure that charged out at Su Yi. Su-yi had just revealed a smile when that figure charged into Su-yi's embrace like a gust of wind. Then a pair of soft lips pressed onto Su-yi's face. Su-yi helplessly touched his face. Looking at Agnes, who had a happy smile in his embrace, he said with a sigh, "Agnes, you're suddenly this passionate, I'm not used to it." Agnes seemed very surprised. "You don't like it?" But Vivian said that human males like their lover giving them a kiss when they see them. It's not that I don't like it, but you." Seeing the unsettled look on Agnes' face, Su-yi's heart softened. He patted her head and said with a smile, "Forget it, it's fine as long as you're happy." Agnes immediately revealed a happy smile. It's even better if you're happy." Seeing the pure smile on Agnes' face, Su-yi gave a faint sigh in his heart. This kind of beautiful and pure elven girl chose to follow him because of the Night Song tribe or Elder Elusia's will. Was this really good? After talking to Steele, Su-yi found that Agnes, who Steele suggested, was a very good choice. After carefully considering it, Su-yi and Agnes had a discussion. He clearly stated his true thoughts and gave the choice to Agnes. As long as Agnes wasn't willing, Su-yi decided that no matter how Elder Elusia and Elder Lysania forced him, he definitely wouldn't randomly choose an elven girl to be with. But when Su-yi proposed his idea, Agnes was strangely happy as she nodded in agreement. Agnes expressed that she had already told Su-yi that she was already used to being with Su-yi and felt very happy being with Su-yi, so she hoped that she could always be with Su-yi. Now that Su-yi chose to be with her, whether it was her personal wishes or the wishes of the elves as a whole, she was very willing. Since Agnes didn't express any objections, Su-yi had a deep discussion with Steele before telling Elder Elusia and Elder Lysania about his choice. He decided that Agnes would be the representative of the elves and become the candidate to be with him. Towards Su-yi's choice, Elder Elusia wasn't too surprised, but Elder Lysania wasn't too satisfied. This was because she had chosen several of the most outstanding elven beauties from the Moon Shadow tribe, but Su-yi didn't choose any of them. In the end, he chose Agnes from the Nightsong tribe, this little girl who didn't seem to be anything special. But since Su-yi was finally willing to make a choice, Elder Lysania naturally wouldn't have any objections. And Elder Elusia naturally wouldn't object. So after many discussions, Agnes, who was the first elven girl Su-yi met after coming to this world, became the one that Elder Elusia and Elder Lysania thought had a very deep and long-term meaning, the one who united with Su-yi. According to what the elves said, Agnes was now Su-yi's partner. From this day forth, she would only accompany Su-yi for the rest of her life and would never consider being with another person of the opposite sex, whether it was an elf or a human. So now that she saw Su-yi again, Agnes had already changed her identity. She was now an elf, showing her passion to Su-yi without any shyness. Although the elven girls from the Moon Shadow tribe had shown even more passion to Su-yi, Agnes was different from them, so Su-yi wasn't used to it. While walking with Agnes into the falling rainforest, Su-yi asked, "Is Freya having fun here?" Agnes nodded with a smile. Freya likes this place very much and has fun every day. I've been bringing her to the depths of the forest these past few days, letting her see the various plants and animals in the forest. She likes it very much. Just this morning she played with a big black bear for the whole morning. Playing with a large black bear? Su-yi was shocked. He wanted to say that this was too dangerous, but then he reacted. The falling rainforest was the home of the Nightsong tribe, and the elves naturally had the ability to communicate with plants and animals. The animals in the falling rainforest were very dangerous to humans, but to the elves of the Nightsong tribe, they were no different from raising pets. With Agnes accompanying her, of course there was no need to worry about Freya being in any danger. However, is Freya not afraid of the large black bear? Did she not cry from fear? Su-yi asked in a curious voice. Not at all. Agnes shook her head. Freya is very brave, she dares to climb onto the back of the large black bear and play with it while riding on its neck. Sui imagined this scene and couldn't help shaking his head. It was true that Freya had been very bold since she was young and rarely cried. Now that she was 2 years old, this trait was very clear. As a girl, this trait made Sui very satisfied. The reason why Freya came back to the falling rain forest to play was because she had received an invitation from Elder Ilusia. Steel was a bit worried, but Sui comforted her. Freya was Sui's successor, so it was very likely that she would take over the matters of the new flyer when she grew up. The relationship between the new flyer and the elves was very important, so letting Freya get used to interacting with the elves from a young age would be a great help to her in the future. Actually, the reason why Elder Ilusia invited Freya to the falling rain forest as a guest was because she had this kind of thought. Moreover, even without these considerations, the falling rain forest and the Nightsong tribe had many new and interesting things that would definitely make Freya happy. Based on her current performance, it was clear that Freya was very used to living here. With Agnes accompanying him, Sui entered the falling rain forest with great familiarity. After passing through the forest, they quickly arrived at the edge of the illusion array protecting the Nightsong tribe. When Agnes was about to open the illusion array to let Sui in, she suddenly thought of something and turned to ask Sui, "That's right, Sir Chairman, when will we mate?" Sui almost fell down. He looked at Agnes with a strange expression and gave a bitter laugh. "I say, Agnes, you are a girl, you can't casually say the word mating, do you understand?" "Is that so?" Agnes had a look of confusion. "Mating is something all living beings do, so why can't I casually say it? The elder said that since you have already chosen to mate with me, then we will definitely mate. So I want to ask clearly, when do you want to mate with me?" "Stop." Sui had no choice but to raise his voice and cut off Agnes' words. With a serious expression, he said to Agnes, "Agnes, although you are an elf, since you want to be with me, then you should learn how humans do things. For us humans, the word mating can't be casually said, especially for a girl. It's not good for me to tell you these things, so you should ask Vivian or Steele when you have time. Have them teach you how human girls do things. For example, you gave me a kiss when we met. This is something a human girl would do you understand?" Agnes didn't really understand, but after thinking about it, she still nodded. "All right, I'll go back and ask them. Then. As for when I'll mate with you, this depends on the atmosphere. Just leave it to me to handle. All right." Seeing that Agnes didn't understand anything, but still firmly nodded, Sui couldn't help feeling a bit guilty. Agnes' age was only equivalent to a human girl who hadn't reached adulthood yet. With her naivety towards human society, she couldn't even compare to a human girl in this aspect. Being together with this kind of naive little girl was simply a crime. Chapter 6:28. Freya was indeed very happy in the falling rain forest. When Sui appeared in front of her and wanted to take her away, she even cried and wasn't willing to leave. After Sui and Agnes promised that they would often bring her here to play, Freya reluctantly agreed to leave with Sui. Sui couldn't help revealing a bitter smile to Elder Ilusia. "I think that Elder doesn't need to worry about Freya's relationship with you at all. Rather, I should be worried that Freya will be biased towards the elves when she grows up." Elder Ilusia revealed a faint smile. "Children are the most pure, she will be good to whoever is good to her. But after she grows up, it will be different. Freya is a human after all, so she will consider problems from the standpoint of humans when she grows up. Chairman Su doesn't need to worry. I just hope that she can be like Chairman Su in the future, treating us elves as equals." "Relax, she is my daughter," Sui replied with a smile. Coming to the falling rain forest this time, other than picking up Freya, Sui had another task. It was to discuss the new cooperation project between the New Flyer and the Nightsong tribe with Elder Elucia. The Nightsong tribe had a new breakthrough in plastic processing. Now they could produce a new plastic product with a high strength and hardness. At the same time, because of the magic of the elves, this new material had a certain high temperature resistance and could even replace steel to a certain extent, so Sui named it tempered plastic. This tempered plastic could be used in most of the magic machines in the New Flyer, replacing some components. Not only could it reduce the cost of these magic machines, it could also reduce the weight of these magic machines and reduce their energy consumption. Take the simplest magic fan as an example. Other than the core part of the magic array, the other parts could be made of large amounts of normal plastic and a part of the tempered plastic. Therefore, it could reduce the weight of the magic fan by a third and reduce the cost from around 1 gold coin to around 80 silver coins. Even if it didn't seem much, as long as one thought about how in the summer that just passed, New Flyer had sold over 700,000 magic fans in various countries, one could tell that just by changing this material, it could save over 100,000 gold coins for New Flyer. Moreover, because of the strong plasticity of the tempered plastic, it could make the appearance of the magic fan more varied. When next summer came, the Frestec Chamber of Commerce would be able to release more magic fans, so naturally they would be more popular. The matter that Sui and Elder Elucia discussed was mainly about the tempered plastic project. According to Kennard's calculations, New Flyer had proposed around 300,000 tons and had a demand for 76 different kinds of tempered plastic parts. The problem was that with the current production capacity of the Nightsong tribe's factory, it was already very hard to satisfy the demand of New Flyer and the other companies. It was impossible for them to take out enough manpower to complete the large order of the tempered plastic that New Flyer had proposed. Sui naturally understood this situation, so he came to discuss with Elder Elucia this time. Other than discussing this project, there was another important matter, which was to help the Nightsong tribe's factory increase their production capacity. Even if the Nightsong tribe's factory had been working with the other factories of New Flyer, learning some of the management methods of the factories under New Flyer, greatly increasing their efficiency, in Suyi's eyes, it was far from enough. Elder Elucia, according to my observations, just based on management, the Nightsong tribe's factory's efficiency can increase by at least 30%. If you're willing to strengthen the management of the factory and let the Elven brothers and sisters work harder, I think that the Nightsong tribe's income will increase by quite a bit. Sui sincerely said. Elder Elucia gave a slight nod. I understand. But Chairman Su, the nature of us elves is to pursue freedom. Actually, the management of the factory has already made many of our clansmen feel that their nature has been suppressed. If it's strengthened, I feel that many of our clansmen won't be able to take it. Sui said in a surprised voice. They can't even take it? Compared to the work intensity of our New Flyer's factory, the Nightsong tribe's factory is already lacking by a lot. It can't be helped. This is the nature of us elves. Even though I've already forced them to change a lot, it's still very hard to suppress our clansmen's nature. Chairman Su, the reason why I chose to cooperate with your company to open this factory is to let our clansmen live a happier life. But if the clansmen are suppressed because of this factory, wouldn't that be putting the cart before the horse? Elder Elucia asked back. Sui shook his head and felt a bit helpless. As a human, it was very hard for him to understand the elves' nature of freedom. But since Elder Elucia had already explained this problem to him, it meant that this problem was already quite serious. If he continued to force them, there might really be a problem. After thinking for a bit, Sui suggested, then let's do it this way. Elder Elucia, we'll still choose to strengthen the management of the Nightsong tribe's factory, but we won't enforce it. Instead, it'll be like the factories under our company, where the remuneration will be based on performance. If you're willing to accept the high-intensity work, then you'll be able to work a bit more. If you're not willing, then it doesn't matter. It's just that the remuneration will be relatively lower. What do you think? Elder Elucia slightly knit her brows, but all of the profits of this factory are currently being distributed by the clansmen. There isn't a distribution of remuneration. After cooperating with the Nightsong tribe for so long, this was the first time that Su-Yi knew about the distribution of profits of the factory. After all this time, all of the profits of the Nightsong tribe's factory belonged to the Nightsong tribe. No wonder the elves in the factory weren't very interested in working. This kind of method of eating from the same big pot would definitely not stimulate any enthusiasm. This won't do. Su-Yi shook his head. Elder Elucia, forgive me for being blunt, but your distribution method is unreasonable. If you want the Nightsong tribe's factory to have a better income and let the clansmen live better lives, please listen to my suggestion and cancel the current distribution model. Instead, it should be like our Frestec Chamber of Commerce's subordinate factories, giving each clansman a corresponding reward, which will make them more active. Elder Elucia didn't object. Instead, she pondered for a bit and gently nodded. Actually, I've already thought about this problem. I've always wanted to discuss it with Chairman Su. Since Chairman Su thinks that there's a problem with this distribution method, then I can try to correct it. You must do it as soon as possible. Su-Yi immediately reminded her. With Su-Yi's understanding of the elves, Elder Elucia's try might take a year or two. Sure enough, after hearing Su-Yi's urging, Elder Elucia thought for a bit and said, "Okay, I'll try to make the corresponding changes within half a year." Su-Yi couldn't help but roll his eyes. Half a year is too long. How about this, Elder Elucia? If you trust me, I'll send a few managers from the Chamber of Commerce to help your Nightsong tribe's factory make a model change. What do you think? Elder Elucia seriously thought for a bit and slowly nodded. Okay. Seeing Elder Elucia agree, Su-Yi let out a sigh of relief. The production capacity of the Nightsong tribe's factory was related to New Flyer's profit. It was also related to the future development of the Nightsong tribe, as well as the relationship between New Flyer and the Nightsong tribe. Su-Yi couldn't help but seriously consider it. Moreover, the plastic products that the Nightsong tribe controlled were very important in Su-Yi's mind, so Su-Yi couldn't afford to lose them. To increase the production capacity of the Nightsong tribe's factory, other than improving the management software, there were two other ways to improve the hardware. One was that New Flyer would develop a new type of magic plastic processing machine for the Nightsong tribe's factory, increasing their production efficiency. For example, in the production line of the Nightsong tribe's factory, the main device was a magic plastic hardening tank that could hold 2 tons of plastic solvent. Count Will said with a sincere smile, "Banta City is currently in its most crucial period of rapid development. We can't do without Chairman Su's support." Su-Yi shook his head with a faint smile. "Based on what I saw on the road, Banta City is in a very stable and fast-developing state. Even without me, I believe that Banta City will become one of the top cities in the Lampari Kingdom." After the two finished exchanging pleasantries, they quickly entered the discussion stage. Su-Yi's main goal in coming back to Banta City this time was to participate in the spring and fall bicycle race that was held twice a year. Other than last fall, it was held every year. Although the cycling competition had only been held 6 times so far, the scale of each competition was larger than the previous one. This year, when the cycling competition was changed to the first half of the spring, the number of participants was as high as 50,000. For this fall's bicycle race, other than the participants from Banta City and the surrounding cities, there were many people from the other cities of the Lampari Kingdom that came to sign up. Other than the Lampari Kingdom, there were quite a few people from the Drake Duchy, the Mirando Duchy, and the Kingdom of Ruhr that signed up. So this year's Banta City bicycle race could be considered an international race. Not only did it have a large influence in the Lampari Kingdom, it even had a large influence in the surrounding countries. What was different from the previous races was that starting from this year's bicycle race, they began accepting groups of teams to participate. Because of this rule, in this year's bicycle race, there were many teams that signed up. Apart from a small number of convoys that were organized on their own accord, most of the other convoys were either funded by a certain merchant association or a certain noble family. Among these teams, there was a team that attracted everyone's attention because this team was called the Xinfei team. This Xinfei team was of course funded by the New Flyer. Things like bicycles were developed by the New Flyer. Even if there were many companies that received the technology from the New Flyer and began to produce their own brand of bicycles, everyone was certain that when it came to bicycles, the New Flyer would definitely surpass the other companies. So when most people bought bicycles, they would first choose the Xinfei brand. Now the Xinfei brand had a terrifying 80% share of the bicycle race, and this was a number that Su Yi deliberately set. If he really wanted to, he could even raise this percentage to 90% or even higher. With the Xinfei team participating in the bicycle race, to most people, the championship would fall into the hands of the Xinfei team. But New Flyer immediately announced a new decision in the Banta Times. Su Yi had released the announcement of the New Flyer in the Banta Times a few days ago, which could be considered a foreshadowing. It was for this discussion. These companies relied on their joint venture with the New Flyer to produce bicycles. Even if they couldn't break the monopoly of the Xinfei brand bicycles, they had obtained quite a bit of profit from this. Now that Su Yi was willing to discuss a deeper cooperation with them, naturally they welcomed him. But the deep cooperation that Su Yi proposed made these chairmen a bit stunned. Su Yi didn't do what they expected or what they expected. He didn't plan on giving them more bicycle production technology to improve the quality of their bicycles. Rather, as soon as he opened his mouth, he proposed to hold a professional competition with them. To put it simply, it's a professional bicycle race that is different from tomorrow's bicycle race. If the Banta City bicycle race is a race that everyone can participate in, the race that we're holding now is a race that only professional cyclists and professional bicycle teams can participate in. The chairmen looked at each other and one of them couldn't help asking, "But Chairman Su, what meaning is there in doing this? If it's just a race, the current Banta City bicycle race is already mature enough and can attract people's attention." The other chairman also had looks of agreement. Su Yi revealed a faint smile and shook his head. "No, the race that I want to hold will only allow professionals to participate. The participating teams will only be allowed to use the name of their own Chamber of Commerce, and they will only be allowed to use bicycles produced by their own Chamber of Commerce. Therefore, it will represent the highest standard of bicycle racing. This highest level doesn't just mean the highest level of participants, it also means the highest level of bicycles. Do you understand what I mean?" Hearing Su Yi's explanation, the chairman thought about it before their eyes lit up at the same time. Chapter 630. The reason why he chose to hold another competition was because Su Yi wanted to imitate the competitions on Earth. He wanted to create a professional, high-end bicycle competition. It would be like the famous competitions on Earth, using this competition to promote bicycles and bicycles, letting the people of the signs accept the existence of bicycles. Although Banta City's bicycle race had attracted a lot of attention because it was a competition for everyone, it wasn't professional. It didn't have any high-end meaning in the eyes of normal people, so the advertising effect wasn't that good. But if they could make the competition that Sue proposed famous, the advertising effect would be much bigger. Other than this, Sue also hoped that he could help these companies develop their brands through this competition. Think about it, being able to be recognized by New Flyer and participate in the most professional and high-end bicycle competition, didn't that mean that their brand of bicycles was recognized by New Flyer? If one paid attention to bicycles, they would pay attention to the Xinfei brand through this competition, so naturally they would pay attention to the bicycles of the other companies. It was different from the companies on Earth, who were worried about competitors. Sue was worried that New Flyer wouldn't have any competitors. To achieve his dream of creating a complete industrial system in the signs, it was impossible to rely on just him and a single company like New Flyer. Only by having more people and more companies participate could he realize this dream. So Sue had always paid attention to training people in this industry, helping them enter the magic machine industry and helping them gain a foothold in this industry. The bicycle companies of Banta City had performed well in the year that they worked with New Flyer, obtaining Sue's approval. So he was willing to hold this competition to help them establish their brand image. After Sue expressed his thoughts to the chairman of these companies, he received the praise of the chairman. They all expressed that they were willing to support Sue's proposal. City Lord Will, who was the middleman on the side, was naturally happy to see this matter succeed because it would help these companies quickly grow. As long as these companies could gain a foothold in the future, it was very likely that they could become a large company that could compete with New Flyer in the bicycle industry, which would have a large influence on Banta City. In front of Sue and the chairman, City Lord Will solemnly promised that he would fully support this competition. He would also provide all the necessary conditions for the cooperation between New Flyer and these companies. This meeting ended with everyone's happy mood. After the chairman left, City Lord Will ask Sue, Chairman Sue, since you can propose this cooperation for the bicycle industry, then for the other industries, do you have a method to help them develop as quickly as possible? City Lord Will could be sent to Banta City by Seveny as the City Lord, so naturally he could be considered Seveny's confidant. He had heard many evaluations of Sue from Seveny before, so he knew that Sue was different from normal merchants. He didn't just care about his own benefits, rather he cared about the development of the entire magic machine industry. So now that he saw that Sue wanted to help these bicycle companies develop, he couldn't help wanting to help the other magic machine industry companies in Banta City gain some benefit. Sue revealed a faint smile and waved his hand. Sir Count, you can't rush this. The reason why I chose to cooperate with the bicycle industry first is because the bicycle can't be considered a magic machine. The threshold to enter is lower and the difficulty to grasp the manufacturing process is also lower. Now that the quality of the bicycles produced by the Banta City companies has reached a certain standard, they can compete with our New Flyer. As for the other industries, Sue didn't continue, but City Lord Will instantly understood Sue's meaning. It was very simple. Other than the bicycles, the magic machines produced by the other companies couldn't enter Sue's eyes at all. They weren't even qualified to compete with the magic machines produced by the New Flyer. If these magic machines were to compete with the Frestec brand magic machines now, they would be crushed without leaving a single scrap. Not only would this not help them, it would harm them. Thinking of this, City Lord Will felt emotional. Sue was truly thinking for the other companies in the magic machine industry. Otherwise, with the New Flyer's absolute lead and the reputation of the New Flyer, the other companies wouldn't have a chance at all. When he was about to praise Sue suddenly changed the topic and asked, Sir Count, has the motorcade sent by the Drake Duchy arrived? City Lord Will was surprised. After thinking for a bit, he nodded. Yes, the Drake Duchy only sent a motorcade, using the name of a company from the Drake Duchy. They arrived 3 days ago, and are currently staying at the newly opened Omrit Hotel outside the city. Omrit Hotel? Sui muttered in a low voice before suddenly revealing a smile. Then he bid farewell to City Lord Will. I still have some things to take care of. Sir Count, when the competition starts tomorrow, I will be there on time. City Lord Will wanted to have Sui stay for lunch, but seeing the expression on Sui's face, he knew that he had other plans, so he didn't keep him. Although he was doubtful about Sui suddenly asking about the Drake Duchy motorcade, he still revealed a smile as he bid farewell to Sui. After leaving the City Lord Manor, Sui drove the magic sedan. He drove Freya, Agnes, Liz, and Linda to the new city district to the west of Banta City. After 70 took the throne, because of the cooperation with the new flyer, the new city district that had been stagnant before quickly developed again. Now, Banta City's new city district was over 10 times the size of the old city district. Not only were there more than 100 factories of various types set up in the industrial area, but the residential area had also become extremely prosperous. All kinds of shops could be seen everywhere, and the streets were crowded with people. At a glance, it was a bustling scene. In the residential area of the new city, the most eye-catching thing was a 7-story building that rose from the ground and was more than 20 meters tall. Other than this building, the other tallest buildings in the new city district were only 10 meters tall. So looking at it from afar, this building was like a crane in a flock of chickens, looking very eye-catching. This building was the Omrit Grand Hotel that had just been built last month. The reason why it was called this was naturally because this building was built by the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce. The success of this building represented a major breakthrough for the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce in the construction industry. Because before this building, although there were other buildings that were several dozen meters tall in the signs, like the Kandla Empire's Royal Palace that was over 50 meters tall, these buildings were all built with large stone blocks. However, these high-rise buildings were built with huge stones. The amount of human resources required to build them was terrifying. It was not something that could be completed by ordinary people. The Omrit Grand Hotel built by the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce was over 20 meters tall and the ground floor was over 1,000 square meters, but the total investment was only 260,000 gold coins. Although this number was quite large for normal people, it wasn't that far away. More importantly, after this hotel was built, normal people could enter at any time, whether they wanted to stay or visit, it was completely up to them. As for places like the Kandla Empire's Royal Palace, how could normal people enter? So when the Omrit Grand Hotel was built and put into use, it was immediately filled with people. The specially built viewing balcony on the top floor of the hotel was almost always packed with people. Everyone hoped to be able to stand at a high place and look down at the scenery below. In the past, this was a privilege that only belonged to mages and some privileged people, but now anyone could stand at such a high place. Sui met Princess Caroline in a luxurious room on the top floor of the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce. When he saw her, Princess Caroline was standing next to the large window of the room, looking at the scenery outside with a thoughtful expression. Hearing the sound of the door being pushed open, Princess Caroline didn't turn around. Only when Sui walked to her side and stood next to her in front of the window and looked at the scenery below for a while did she let out a sigh. Chairman Su, standing here, I finally understand why so many people are so eager to control power. Because looking down on everyone from a high place and treating everyone like ants, it's really easy for people to feel a sense of satisfaction. Sui shot a glance at the bustling crowd outside the window, thinking that this was only a 7-story building. If you were to go up to a 100-story building on Earth, You wouldn't even be able to see the crowd below. Wouldn't you be even more moved? Turning his head to look at Princess Caroline, he discovered that after not seeing her for nearly 2 years, Princess Caroline was now even more beautiful. Moreover, compared to before, she now had a mature charm. Compared to before, there was still a trace of immaturity between her eyebrows, which made her even more alluring. Feeling Su Yi's gaze, Princess Caroline turned her head and revealed a brilliant smile to Su Yi. This smile was like a flower blooming, tender and beautiful beyond compare. Su Yi couldn't help smiling as well. Your Highness, after not seeing you for 2 years, you've become even more beautiful. As an old friend, I feel very gratified. Just very gratified? Princess Caroline's smile had a trace of playfulness. You don't feel very moved? Su Yi laughed. I've never denied that your Highness is moved. Shortly after, he restrained his smile and said with a serious expression, But your Highness, now isn't the time to discuss whether or not your heart is moved, right? Princess Caroline's smile quickly disappeared, and she gave a soft sigh before nodding. That's right, Chairman Su. I secretly came to see you this time to ask you for help. If you're not willing to lend a hand, our Drake Duchy might fall into a desperate situation. Chapter 631. Princess Caroline's face was as beautiful as a flower, and she had a pleading look on her face, making people feel pity for her. However, Su Yi looked at Princess Caroline and his expression didn't change at all, rather his voice turned cold. Your Highness, forgive me for being blunt, but this matter is your Drake Duchy's fault for not listening to my advice. Now you're asking me for help, don't you think it's a bit funny? Princess Caroline's expression turned dark. After pausing, the worry on her face disappeared, and she revealed a charming smile again. She took Su Yi's arm without any politeness and shook it. Although this is our mistake, I know that Chairman Su definitely wouldn't sit by and watch, right? Otherwise, you definitely wouldn't have come to see me. Su Yi coldly looked at her and didn't reply, as his expression didn't change at all. This time Princess Caroline came to Banta City with the Drake Duchy's motorcade. Of course it wasn't to cheer on the Drake Duchy's motorcade, but rather to discuss something with Su Yi. Or to be more precise, she was here to ask for help from Su Yi. When King Eric was on the throne, Count Samo was worried that King Eric and Duke Stag would target the New Flyers industry in Seoul City. So after discussing this with Su Yi, he gradually moved this industry to the Drake Duchy. Because of the support of the Drake Duchy, these industries were kept intact and had already taken root in the Drake Duchy. Not only did they develop well, the Drake Duchy obtained large amounts of technology from them and began to invest in developing their own magic machine industry. Of course, this was with Su Yi's tacit approval. Otherwise the Drake Duchy's magic machine industry wouldn't have developed as well as it did. But perhaps because it developed too smoothly and too quickly, and because the Lampari Kingdom fell into a period of chaos due to the change in power, the Drake Duchy lost contact with Su Yi. Without the technical support and guidance of the new flyer, the Drake Duchy began to develop magic machine technology and made some progress. They even developed several household magic machines that were different from the Xinfei brand and sold them to the 2 countries beside the Drake Duchy, earning large amounts of profit. After Su Yi regained contact with the Drake Duchy and learned of this matter, he immediately asked the Drake Duchy to send over the magic machine technology they had developed. He wanted the Frestek Chamber of Commerce to see if there were any mistakes or flaws, but he was rejected by the Drake Duchy. Su Yi had given the Drake Duchy a warning back then, saying that developing magic machines was a systematic project. Without a solid foundation, it was easy for problems to occur. But the Drake Duchy had ignored Su Yi's warning and even weakened their relationship with the new flyer because of this. Su Yi naturally didn't have the power to interfere with the decision of the Drake Duchy that was 2,000 kilometers away from the Principality of Constantine. Moreover, the Drake Duchy wasn't willing to cooperate, so naturally he wasn't willing to force them. Seeing the Drake Duchy's betrayal, he simply didn't care. In the beginning, there wasn't a problem, but just last month, there was a serious problem with the Drake Duchy's side. The Drake Duchy had sold their magic fans and magic refrigerators to the two neighboring countries, but there had been several accidents. Then there had been large-scale failures, causing many accidents. This caused the citizens of the two countries to be filled with dissatisfaction and distrust towards the Drake Duchy. Because of this matter, the two countries made a serious protest to the Drake Duchy. They were very angry that the Drake Duchy sold such low-quality products to them, so they requested the Drake Duchy to immediately compensate them and propose a plan to solve the problem. The compensation was fine, but in terms of a solution, the Drake Duchy met a problem. This was because the Drake Duchy had carefully studied it, and with the help of the technicians the new flyer had left in the Drake Duchy, they found that the magic fans and magic refrigerators that they developed had large-scale failures because of a design flaw. If they wanted to fix this design flaw, it meant that all the production lines and processes would need to be changed. The Drake Duchy didn't have this ability, and it was impossible for them to change all the production lines and processes. Because to do this, according to their estimates, they would have to invest at least 3 million gold coins. Adding in the compensation to the two countries, the Drake Duchy would have to pay at least 5 million gold coins because of this matter. For the Drake Duchy that only had a revenue of over 1 million gold coins a year, this was without a doubt a serious loss that they couldn't afford. However, the compensation to the two countries had to be given and the changes to the production line and process had to be continued. Otherwise, it would be equal to the Drake Duchy's investment in this area being a complete failure and the initial investment would be a complete loss. But with the Drake Duchy alone, they didn't have the strength to do this. Feeling helpless, they could only ask Sue for help. But Sue was very dissatisfied with the Drake Duchy's betrayal. Now that the Drake Duchy was in trouble, they turned around to ask for help. Even if they sent out a super beauty like Princess Caroline, how could he easily agree? Seeing Sue's cold face, Princess Caroline lowered her head and revealed a pitiful look. She said in a soft voice, "I know that you must be very angry, but we also have our difficulties. Our Drake Duchy is a small country. If we don't have anything in our hands, we can only be bullied by others." Sue gave a snort. "So you can go back on our previous agreement and develop your own products without knowing about me? Don't forget, I specially warned you about this, but you didn't listen. Now that you've met a problem, why don't you solve it yourselves? I know my wrongs." Princess Caroline revealed a coquettish appearance before grabbing Sue's arm and shaking it. She revealed a charming smile and said in a soft voice, "If you're angry, we'll compensate you. For example, as long as you're willing, I can use my body to compensate you." Sue's right arm shook and broke free from Princess Caroline's grasp. He took a step back and shook his head before saying with a serious expression, "Your Highness, I think you should know that your body doesn't have any meaning in this matter. Moreover, I'm not interested in this matter, so don't waste time." Princess Caroline couldn't help glaring at Sue. She was a natural-born beauty. Not only was she the #1 beauty in the Drake Duchy, even after meeting so many people outside, only Sue's current wife, Steele, could compare to her in terms of looks. Everyone else was a bit inferior. Why was it that no matter what she did, Sue wasn't tempted at all? If his interests were special and he didn't like beauties, how could he have taken a wife like Steele? Even his female slaves were all very beautiful. It was clear that he didn't have much resistance to beauties like normal men. Sue didn't know that Princess Caroline's thoughts had already drifted to something completely unrelated. Seeing her in a daze, he gave a sigh before continuing, "But what you just said was right. If I wasn't willing to help you solve your problem, I wouldn't have come to see you." Hearing this, Princess Caroline's expression changed and her large eyes were filled with joy. Really? Is that true? Chairman Su, you're willing to help us? That's right. Su-yi slowly nodded. No matter how your Drake Duchy views our Frestec Chamber of Commerce and me, in my mind, the Drake Duchy is still an important partner. As long as you're willing to cooperate with us in the future, I can treat the previous matters as if they never happened. Seeing Su-yi's serious expression, Princess Caroline's heart was filled with joy. This was a large amount of 5 million gold coins. It was like a mountain that pressed down on the hearts of the Drake Duchy's high-level members. It also pressed down on Princess Caroline's face until recently. Everyone knew that if the new flyer was willing to help, they could easily solve this problem. But because of what the Drake Duchy did before, no one in the Drake Duchy had any confidence that Su-yi would agree to help. Princess Caroline took the opportunity of the Banta City bicycle race to see Su-yi and obtained Su-yi's agreement, which filled her heart with a trace of hope. However, only when Su-yi personally agreed to help did Princess Caroline put down the mountain in her heart, and the smile on her face became bright for the first time. Seeing the smile on Princess Caroline's face, Su-yi shook his head and gave a sigh in his heart. If it was from a personal point of view, the Drake Duchy going back on their agreement made him very dissatisfied, so he wasn't willing to help the Drake Duchy. But looking at it from an overall point of view, the Drake Duchy was already deeply affected by the magic machine industry. In Su-yi's plan, it was an important piece of territory for the magic machine industry, so it definitely couldn't be easily lost. Even if the Drake Duchy didn't appear, he would still think of a way to take back his influence on this territory and make it develop according to his plan. Now that the Drake Duchy had this serious matter that could harm their national strength, they wanted him to help, which was a very good opportunity for him. The attitude he had put on in front of Princess Caroline was nothing more than an act. Moreover, his acting skills really weren't that good. If it was Kennard, his acting would be much more realistic. But if it was Kennard, he wouldn't be so direct with Princess Caroline. With these thoughts flashing through his mind, Su-yi nodded to Princess Caroline and continued, "There's no problem with helping you, but Your Highness, I'm not helping you selflessly. Correspondingly, I have to make some requests." This was naturally within Princess Caroline's expectations. She nodded and said with a charming smile, "Of course there's no problem. As long as Chairman Su is willing to help, no matter what conditions you raise, we can discuss it. Moreover, these conditions also include me." Looking at Princess Caroline's charming eyes and smile, Su-yi's eyes were still clear as he said with a serious expression, "Your Highness, this matter involves 5 million gold coins. I believe that there is no woman in this world whose body is worth 5 million gold coins." Princess Caroline's expression suddenly changed. Su-yi's words were clearly treating her as a woman who had sold her body. But thinking about it, what difference was there between what she had just said and selling her body? Thinking of this, Princess Caroline's expression suddenly changed. She only felt humiliation, anger, helplessness, and deep sorrow in her heart. Su-yi calmly looked at her for a while before suddenly grabbing her hand and speaking in a much softer voice. "At the same time, I also believe that in this world, there is no woman whose heart can be bought with 5 million gold coins." Princess Caroline was slightly stunned. She raised her head to look at Su-yi's incomparably clear eyes and incomparably sincere face. She only felt a strange feeling surge in her heart and she was stunned for a moment. Chapter 632. The 1st of October, it was a very memorable day for Su-yi, but for the people of Signs, it wasn't a special day. Even in the Lampari Kingdom, the 1st of October wasn't anything special. Only in Banta City would the 1st of October be a bit different from normal. Because on this day, it was the day of the Banta City bicycle race. other than last year when the Lampari kingdom fell into civil strife and the race was cancelled, since the new flyer proposed this race 4 years ago. The 1st of April and the 1st of October were the busiest days of the year in Banta City. After a long time, it had even become an important festival for the people of Banta City. Especially this year's autumn bicycle race. Because of the cooperation between Banta City's City Lord Manor and the Frestec Chamber of Commerce, they had advertised it a month ahead of time in the Lampuri Kingdom and the surrounding countries. As the race approached, there were countless people who wanted to participate in it that had flocked to the city. There were even people who rode their bicycles from places that were at least 800 kilometers away to come here. After the Banta Times reported this matter, it ignited everyone's passion for participating. It made the number of people participating in the bicycle race reach a new high, far surpassing the previous races. On the day before the competition, which was also the registration deadline, the final tally of the number of people who had signed up for the competition actually exceeded 60,000. Of course, the reason why there were so many people signing up, other than the Banta City Lord Manor and the new flyer's good advertising, there was another important reason. It was that the prize money for this race was much higher than before. According to the prize money announced by the new flyer a month ahead of time, as well as the tradition of the previous races, as long as one placed in the top 100, they would receive a cash prize. But this time the new flyer had greatly increased the prize. 51st to 101st, each person would receive 100 gold coins. 11th to 50th, each person would receive 300 gold coins. 4th to 10th, each person would receive 500 gold coins. 3rd place would receive 1,000 gold coins. 2nd place would receive 2,000 gold coins. And the champion would receive a shocking 5,000 gold coins. When the various newspapers announced the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's rewards, it created an uproar in every place. The champion would be rewarded with 5,000 gold coins. If he could win the championship, he wouldn't have to worry about money for the rest of his life. Even if he couldn't become the champion, the runner-up would still receive 2,000 gold coins, which was also a shocking amount of wealth. As long as one entered the top 100, they would earn at least 100 gold coins. Although 100 gold coins wasn't considered much for the people of Banta City, it was still very attractive to the people of other places. Therefore, just for the sake of the ridiculously high prize money, countless people scrambled for this competition like a flock of ducks. Hey, Chairman Su, I have to say that you're really generous. Mayor Will and Sue E stood behind the rostrum of the opening ceremony and looked at the crowd behind the curtain. Mayor Will couldn't help but sigh. Even if we don't mention the cost of publicity and organization, the prize money alone is more than 30,000 gold coins. Moreover, this competition is just a charity event. New Flyer won't be able to get any benefits from it. I think, other than Chairman Su, no other businessman would do something like this, right? No, Sir Count, you're wrong. Su E shook his head and said with a faint smile, although our company can't get any benefits from this competition, we've already invested close to 100,000 gold coins. But if you say that we can't get any benefits from this, that would be a big mistake. Mayor Will looked at Su E with a curious gaze. Why can't I see it? Su E revealed a smile and pointed at the crowd in the distance. Look, Sir Count, just the people participating in this competition are already over 60,000. As for the people who aren't participating and are just watching, it's already over this number. At the same time, the people who know about this competition and pay attention to it are several times this number. Even if I underestimate it, I think that there are over 1 million people who know about this competition. It's definitely not that little. City Lord Will shook his head. Mayor Will shook his head and said, with the previous publicity, I don't dare say for other countries, but at least in our Lampari kingdom, I dare say that even if a person is deaf or blind, they will still know about this competition. If we calculate it, it's definitely possible for it to exceed 5 million. That's why I said that this is our company's biggest benefit. Sui said with a smile. Don't you think that this is actually the best way to advertise? Through this competition, we can let so many people know about our new flyer and even leave a deep impression in their hearts. I think that if we just rely on normal publicity, not to mention 100,000 gold coins, even 200,000 or 300,000 gold coins wouldn't be able to achieve this effect. Mayor Will stared blankly for a moment before revealing a look of understanding. Indeed. No wonder you've been promoting this competition with the slogan of sunshine and health. This can be considered as establishing a positive image for new flyer in people's heart. Sir Count really understands with a hint. Sui said with a smile. Mayor Will gave a soft nod before asking in confusion, but Chairman Su, there is no one in our Lampari kingdom that doesn't know about your new flyer, so why do you need to rely on this competition and spend so much effort and money to advertise? Don't you think it's a waste? No. Sir City Lord, creating a brand image is a very long process and it will never end. Moreover, creating a brand image is very hard, but destroying it is very easy. So no matter what, you have to work hard to advertise your brand image and protect it so that it won't be easily damaged. After saying this, Sui suddenly turned his head and looked at Princess Caroline, who was looking at the participants in the distance with interest while listening to the conversation between Sui and Mayor Will. Your Highness, forgive me for being blunt, but because of the incident that happened in your Drake Duchy, your country's brand image has been greatly damaged. If you want to restore the negative image in other people's hearts, you have to pay a very large price. I hope that you can be mentally prepared for this, and that Duke Drake can clearly understand this. Princess Caroline was a bit stunned before revealing a faint smile. She nodded and seriously said, I understand. But Chairman Su, I don't know much about creating a brand image. Can you help us with this? Sui shook his head. He thought that Princess Caroline really knew how to climb up a pole, immediately turning it around to rely on him. But if he wanted to help the Drake Duchy establish a magic machine industrial system and make it a part of Suyi's magic machine industrial system, rebuilding the image of the Drake Duchy's magic machines was something that had to be done. So he didn't refuse and nodded in agreement. Seeing Sui agree, Princess Caroline immediately revealed a smile. She didn't avoid City Lord Will on the side as she grabbed Suyi's arm and leaned forward, pressing her full chest against Suyi's arm. Then she revealed a sweet smile to City Lord Will. City Lord Will, if you think that Chairman Su will do a losing business, then you're completely wrong. I've known him for so long, but I've never seen him do a losing business. Sui looked at her and coldly said, Let's not talk about other things, but in the matter of your Drake Duchy, I've lost quite a bit. Princess Caroline knew that Sui was still brooding over the Drake Duchy's betrayal of the agreement. She couldn't refute this and could only stick out her tongue before smiling. She tightened her grip on Suyi's arm and pressed her chest closer. Her charming eyes were like silk as she softly said, At worst, I'll compensate you. Sui slightly knit his brows and was stunned. He wanted to pull his arm back, but he never thought that Princess Caroline would use so much strength that he couldn't pull it back. In this situation, Sui couldn't really use all his strength to break free, so he could only helplessly let her do as she pleased. Princess Caroline saw that Sui couldn't break free and immediately revealed a proud smile. City Lord Will on the side laughed when he saw this and said to the two of them, I'm going to host the opening ceremony. If the two of you are willing to watch the competition, please wait in the VIP seat. Watching City Lord Will leave, Princess Caroline suddenly turned to Sui and asked with a slight frown, Chairman Su, I know about your two beautiful maids and your daughter Freya, but where did that beautiful elven girl come from? Why was she in your room this late? Could it be that she is also your... Seeing Princess Caroline's doubtful look, Sui couldn't help laughing. Because when he left Banta City, Sue had already sold all his businesses in Banta City, even selling the Falling Star Manor. So when he came back this time, Sue didn't have a fixed residence. He rejected City Lord Will's invitation to stay in the City Lord Manor and chose to stay in the Omelet Hotel. 1. It was to make it easier to discuss the cooperation with the Drake Duchy with Princess Caroline. 2. It was because the Omelet Hotel was the most luxurious residence in Banta City. Adding in the fact that Chairman Cruz had already given Sue a VIP card, he didn't need to spend a single cent to stay here, so naturally he wouldn't choose any other place. Princess Caroline stayed in the most luxurious room, right next to Sue's. Last night, Princess Caroline had knocked on Sue's door. Princess Caroline had some strange thoughts in her heart, but when the door opened, she found that other than Sue, there was also an elven girl in the room. She was instantly confused. Although Princess Caroline had retreated because of this, she had always been curious about the appearance of this elven girl. Now she couldn't help asking Sue about it. "Your guess is right," Sue calmly replied. "She is called Agnes. She is my new elven wife." Princess Caroline looked at Sue in a daze for a while before taking a deep breath. She said with a shocked look, "You can even conquer an elven girl, it's no wonder you can ignore my charm." Sue revealed a faint smile. If Princess Caroline knew that even an elven girl like Agnes was forced by Elder Elucia and Elder Lysania for a long time before he was forced to pick her, what kind of expression would she have? Chapter 633. The final results of the Banta City bicycle race surprised quite a few people. The Frestec Chamber of Commerce had sent a total of 5 drivers, but these 5 drivers had surpassed everyone else to reach the finish line, taking first to 5th place. Although the new flyer had announced ahead of time that these 5 riders wouldn't take any places and wouldn't take any prize money, in everyone's eyes, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th place belonged to the Xinfei team. As for the others, they were just picking up the leftovers from the Xinfei team. Because the Frestec team's racers had taken the lead from beginning to end, most of the other racers could only accept it, but they were also a bit depressed. According to the announcement from the new flyer, the riders of the Xinfei team would be officially participating next year and their results would be recorded. The most important thing was that they would take the prize money. But in just a single year, how could they close such a large gap and catch up to the riders of the Xinfei team? It was a good thing that after a few days, there was another announcement from the new flyer in the Banta Times. In this announcement, the new flyer said that starting next year, the new flyer would be working with several other companies to hold a professional bicycle race, which would be an official competition. The riders of the Xinfei team wouldn't be participating in a public competition like the Banta City bicycle race next year, they would only be participating in a professional race. This news attracted everyone's attention. What was a professional race? How was it different from the Banta City bicycle race? The so-called professional, where did it come from? Was it just because the riders were stronger? If it really was like this, it would be great news for the people who wanted to participate in the Banta City bicycle race. Without the strong competitors, their chances of winning the prize money would greatly increase. However, when everyone saw the detailed explanation of this so-called professional bicycle race that was temporarily called the Xinfei bicycle race, they were all shocked. Because in the announcement, the Frestec Chamber of Commerce had said that the champion of this series would receive a high prize of over 50,000 gold coins. 50,000 gold coins. For most people, this was an incomparably large amount of money that they couldn't even dream of. If they could obtain 50,000 gold coins, not to mention not having to worry about food and clothing, they could even live a luxurious life that they could only dream of. For many people, if they were given 50,000 gold coins, it wasn't a problem no matter what they had to pay. This so-called Frestec Bicycle Grand Prix, was it really worth that much? Hey kid, you're really planning on giving 50,000 gold coins to the champion? With Su Yi's current position, the only one who dared to blow his beard and stare at him without any courtesy was of course Great Magician Camilla. He looked at the Bantatimes in his hand before looking at the smiling Su Yi and giving a strong snort. I worked hard in the magic research facility for a year, and you only gave me a salary of 10,000 gold coins. Now, he's just a good cyclist, and you're willing to give him 50,000 gold coins. Of salary of Xinfei. Could it be that you think that a great magician like me isn't worth that much? Sui quickly waved his hand and explained, No, of course not. The position of a great magician in my heart is something that no one can compare to. Don't you think so, Great Magician Toluchi? Great Magician Toluchi, who had been watching Great Magician Camilla with a smile on his face, said with a nod, I believe that Su-Yi places importance on great magicians in your heart. But Great Magician Toluchi deliberately dragged out his voice. It's like Camilla said, a cyclist receiving more money than us two great magicians. This doesn't seem too reasonable, right? Seeing the unkind gazes of the two great magicians, Su-Yi couldn't help giving a bitter laugh. When he made the rules of the race, he wanted to create a stir and forgot to consider this point. After thinking for a bit, Su-Yi said with a serious expression, Grandfather, Great Magician Toluchi, you have to pay attention. It says that the champion may receive a maximum of 50,000 gold coins, but it isn't certain. In fact, according to the rules of the race, it is impossible to receive the highest prize. Then how much can it be? Great Magician Toluchi kept asking. The highest is 50,000 gold coins, but it should be at least 20,000 gold coins, right? That is still more than us. That's right. Great Magician Camilla glared at him. Brat, if you don't explain yourself today, don't blame me for being impolite. Sui shook his head with a bitter smile. Grandfather, Great Magician Toluchi, I think you should know how important great magicians are to me. Actually, as long as you're willing, not to mention 50,000 gold coins a year, even 100,000 gold coins isn't a problem. Moreover, as long as other great magicians are willing to join our company, it wouldn't be a problem to give them a high wage. But, because of the salary structure of the company, we can't do this. I hope you can understand our difficulties. Great Magician Camilla gave a cold snort. You still don't understand? Toluchi and I aren't complaining that our current salary is too little. Actually, 10,000 gold coins is already a lot, it's enough for us to use. But we're not convinced. Why does the champion get a higher salary than us two great magicians? And it's this much higher? This. Grandfather, actually the prize for the champion is not paid by our new flyer alone, but rather all the companies participating in the race. According to the current distribution rules, even if the champion gets 50,000 gold coins, our company will only pay 8,000 gold coins at most. 8,000? That's more like it. Great Magician Camilla nodded. But this is still very high. There are so many good magicians in the Academy of Magic, but they only get a few hundred gold coins a year. This isn't the same. Sui shook his head. Actually, this race is mainly for advertising purposes. Through the attention of this race, it will promote our companies even better. So the higher the prize, the better, because this is the only way we can attract people's attention. Great Magician Camilla thought about it before slowly nodding. This isn't wrong. Alright, kid, your words are reasonable. Seeing that Great Magician Camilla finally let go of this matter, Su-Yi let out a sigh of relief. Looking at what Great Magician Camilla was sitting on, Su-Yi had an idea before saying with a smile, Actually, Grandfather, it's not just bicycles. After the magic sedans become popular, I'm also planning to hold a professional race related to the magic sedans. Moreover, this race will be bigger than the bicycle race, so there will be more investment. Of course, there will be more prize money. Racing? Great Magician Camilla's eyes lit up. That's great. Right, this race must be held. I will definitely participate when the time comes. Seeing Great Magician Camilla's excited appearance, Su Yi's lips couldn't help twitching. Great Magician Camilla relied on his perseverance and his powerful magic to finally hone his driving skills, but he also fell in love with racing. Even if Su Yi didn't mention this race, he would still drive the magic sedan all over the place, using the name of experimenting. A while ago, Elder Lysania had been living in Su Yi's private manor. Because she also fell in love with racing, she went crazy with Great Magician Camilla almost every day. In just a single month, the magic sedans that the two of them had crashed into had reached as many as 7. It was a good thing that the two of them had outstanding magic, so it was always the cars that crashed and they themselves were fine. Thinking of how if there really was another world's F1 Grand Prix, Great Magician Camilla might really sign up and Elder Lysania might also participate, Su Yi's heart was filled with incomparable surprise. An old man who was over 60 years old and an old woman who was over 500 years old would be F1 drivers? This was simply a large joke. The most ridiculous thing was that this joke was actually true. Su Yi forced down the strange thoughts in his heart and gave a cough before continuing. Grandfather, before this we have to finish our research. I think that you should know better than anyone that the wind magic engine has its limits, so the magic sedan's speed can't break through. If you want to truly enjoy super speed, you have to work harder on the fire magic engine. Great Magician Camilla glared at Su Yi. Nonsense. Why do you think I ran all the way here from the Principality of Constantine? Su Yi nodded. He stood up and made a hand gesture to Great Magician Toluchi, indicating that they could begin. Right now they were in the Academy of Magic branch in the new flyer of the Falling Rain Valley. After Great Magician Toluchi was hired by the new flyer, he had always stayed in this branch to do research. Because of his special status as a great magician, even when the kingdom was in chaos, this place wasn't affected that much. In these 2 years, Great Magician Toluchi had done quite a bit of research. His main research direction recently was the fire magic engine. The reason why Great Magician Camilla wasn't in charge of this was because 1. Su Yi was worried that Great Magician Camilla would be completely immersed in this and might encounter danger. 2. In terms of attainments in fire magic, Great Magician Toluchi was stronger than Great Magician Camilla. They were both researching the fire magic engine, but Great Magician Toluchi's research direction was different from the research direction of the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce headquarters in the Principality of Constantine. The magicians at the headquarters mainly focused on increasing the stability of the fire magic engine and reducing its power consumption. Great Magician Toluchi's research direction was only one, which was increasing the power of the fire magic engine. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.